kick the field goal. It'll be Jason Chingel out of the hold of Mesco. Good snap, good hold, and the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, and a good Monday morning, and welcome to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. And we ask that you please subscribe to the program. Flip the notification switch on. If you prefer to join us in podcast form, by all means, please do. Just search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. We'll get to the Bengals in a second. But the biggest story in this town, I guess you could argue that, but you knew that this was going to happen for a second straight year. A big-time program coming after UC head football coach Luke Fickell. This time, it was Wisconsin. And this time, he simply could not say no. The Badgers give Fickell everything he could want in his entire career that's not Ohio State. Big Ten, big facilities, coast-to-coast alumni, big alumni money. It's the Midwest. There's no way he could turn it down. Fickell leaves as UC's all-time winningest coach. He rescued this program from the abyss that was Tommy Tuberville and turned it into a legitimate national football power. One, of course, that last year broke into the college football playoff as a non-Power 5 conference team. If you're a UC fan, don't be angry. You can be upset, but don't be angry. This is the right move for a man who's been all about making the right moves. Celebrate the 6 years you had him. And for the record, the guy I'd try to hire is Dion Sanders. All right, now the Bengals. What an overall incredibly impressive performance it was yesterday in Tennessee against a good Titans team. The Bengals were more physical, and they made all the plays on both sides of the ball when they needed to make them in the 20-16 win. Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. Is there any doubt? Was there ever any doubt? 270 yards, T. Higgins, 7 catches, 114 yards, and then the defense just smothered Derrick Henry. His second lowest rushing game this season, 38 rushing yards for Derrick Henry. Cincinnati has won 7 of 9 since losing the first 2 games of the season and is now tied atop the AFC North with Baltimore because maybe in the shocker of all shockers, fellas, Casey McAllister, Paul Fritchner.
Good morning.
Before we get to the Ravens, very exciting yesterday.
It was very, very exciting. Great win. Ryan Tannehill did okay, but I will say that majority of his 290-something yards came off of 1 or 2 big plays. Yep. One of them being the Derrick Henry screen, which, and the deep ball that Cam Taylor-Britt he's got to do a better job at contesting that. But anyways, great win for Cincinnati. And these games that we're about to talk about, even better.
And, Paul, how was your journey out to Portland with the Xavier Musketeers?
It was good. It was a great weekend. A lot of really high-level college basketball. I was there for not just the Xavier games. I saw a bunch of I saw Duke play their games. I saw Purdue, Gonzaga, all those teams. It was a high-level event. It was a great event. Phil Knight was his 85th birthday party, as they would say. That was So the PK 85, they did it 5 years ago for his 80th, and then this year for his 85th. So it was all the Nike schools that were there. Kentucky didn't go. But
were you just reporting there, or were you doing some of the same stuff that you were doing for the Xavier games? Like,
no, yeah, I was just reporting for the Big East teams. So I didn't. Our flight last night, I didn't get to go to the Connecticut game. They ended up winning the tournament last night. They looked great. They might have been them and Purdue. I would have loved to have seen them play as like a bracketed championship contender team. But I think everybody here wants to talk football, Tom. But
all right, we're going to get to basketball.
We can get to basketball later
because it was a big weekend for both Xavier and UC.
Yep.
But we were starting to talk about the shocker of all shockers. Went down in Jacksonville. The Jaguars knock off Baltimore 28-27. Trevor Lawrence throws for 321 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was an 18-point fourth quarter rally for the Jags. Now, if you didn't see it, Jacksonville got the ball down 7 with 2 minutes to go. They drive 75 yards, score a touchdown. They decide to go for 2, and they get it. But just when you thought the Ravens were dead, bang, 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 Justin Tucker lines up for a 66-yard field goal attempt. It was just short, and that was that. In Cleveland, the Buccaneers, I'm not going to say a stunner, maybe a surprise, beating Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Bucs just aren't very good. Nick Chubb runs for a 3-yard score with 19 seconds left in overtime to seal the win. Other games of note, how about Mike White? Remember him? Lit up the Bengals last year, that same guy. First start. Well, he made the start for the Jets yesterday against Chicago after Zach Wilson was benched. He throws for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns in a 31-10 rout of the Bears. A wild one in Philadelphia last night. As the Eagles hold off Green Bay 40-33, Philadelphia rushes for 363 yards, including a franchise record by a quarterback for the Eagles, 157 from Jalen Hurts. Aaron Rodgers left the game with a rib injury after throwing 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Jordan Love came on, threw a touchdown, but not enough. The Eagles are a league best 10-1 on the year. All right, college football. So this past weekend turns out to be Luke Fickell's last at UC. He had to start Evan Prater at quarterback for the first time after Ben Bryant was injured the week before. And while Prater had his moments, he looked like a first-time starter in a 27-24 loss to Tulane. That was on Friday. The loss was the first for UC at Nippert Stadium in their last 33 games. It also means no trip to the American Conference Championship game next week. But a tip of the cap goes out to Bryant. He's not going to play in the bowl game. He's out for the year. This kid had a good year. He had a really good year, and we wish him well whatever is next. The big game turned out to be a one-sided big game for the Maize and Blue of Michigan. They hammer Ohio State 45-23, winning in Columbus for the first time since the 2000 season. You realize Tom Brady had not yet made his NFL debut the last time Michigan won in Columbus. J.J. McCarthy certainly wasn't the most decorated quarterback coming into this matchup, but he left as the best player on the field, throwing 3 long touchdown passes. He ran for another score. The Wolverines beat their rivals for a second straight year. Michigan will certainly move at least to number 2. Who knows? Maybe they go to number 1. In the new college football rankings this week, that'll be released tomorrow night, Michigan will play Purdue in the Big Ten championship game Saturday night in Indianapolis. How about TCU? They will certainly go to number 3 as the Horned Frogs cap off an undefeated season for the first time since Andy Dalton was their quarterback back in 2014. TCU wallops Iowa State 62-14. The Horned Frogs will play surging Kansas State Saturday in the Big 12 championship game. And unlike 2014, when they went undefeated and got leapfrogged by Ohio State, If they win, they are guaranteed a spot in that college football playoff. So what about number 5, LSU? Well, the Tigers are done, all but eliminated. After being shocked at Texas A&M 38-23, the Tigers will still play for the SEC championship on Saturday against Georgia, but with 3 losses, they're done. USC will certainly leapfrog LSU. Will they pass Ohio State? You would think so tomorrow night. The Trojans beat Notre Dame 38-27. If you didn't watch it, it was one of the most amazing individual performances that I have ever seen by a quarterback, by Caleb Williams. He's going to win the Heisman. Mark it down. It's not going to be Hooker. It's not going to be Stroud. It's going to be Caleb Williams, and he's earned it. Logic would say that if SC wins a Pac-12 title game, that's Friday night in Vegas against the only team they lost to this year, Utah. So they would avenge their only loss. They would be in the Final Four. Then you've got Ohio State, and don't count out Alabama. The Tide destroyed rival Auburn and is lurking as a 2-loss team. College basketball, after losing to Arizona and Ohio State, UC salvages a win in Maui by beating Louisville 81-62. Bearcats 4-3 on the year. Same record for the Xavier Musketeers. They went toe-to-toe with some big-time teams now. Gonzaga and Duke. Paul, you were there.
Yeah.
I mean, they went toe-to-toe with these guys. And look, even though they only got 1 win out there, I would make the argument they are going to be all the better for it in the long haul under Sean Miller.
Yeah, I tweeted that last night, and I caught some flack for that by saying that it seems to me that Xavier's going to be an NCAA tournament team this year, and I understand that they haven't done themselves any favors by not actually closing these close games out against a team like Duke or Gonzaga or Indiana, right? You play number 6, 8, and 11. You have them right down to the wire with a chance to win all 3 of them, and you don't win any of them. So now you play West Virginia this weekend. Bob Huggins is coming to town. You play Cincinnati in 2 weeks in the shootout. Both of those games become a whole lot more important for Xavier in the non-conference resume because those are your last 2 big games to win outside of the Big East schedule. And the Big East isn't all that great this year. But still, the performances that Xavier's put up against those top-tier teams has been pretty encouraging. So as long as those are steps in the right direction, they can correct some of those defensive issues, I think they'll be good. I think that they're taking a step there. And then for UC too, I think the shootout now all of a sudden, I don't want to say is any more important than it already was, but for both teams, it's becoming a game that you look at your non-conference schedule, and especially for UC, is their only real power conference objective left on their schedule. And then for Xavier, they have West Virginia too, but in the non-conference at least. So yeah.
Good for them.
Here's my question back to you. When you see that Xavier's put up those performances over the last couple of weeks, and then you see with last week in Maui and everything like that, now Fickell with the coaching change, how much is the shootout going to get swept under the rug this year?
Oh, I don't think it's swept under the rug at all.
I don't think so.
It's a big deal in this town. I mean, it's one night a year, and it's a huge deal, always has been in this town. I don't like the fact that now, for the last number of years, that ESPN does that game because I don't think that they present it the way that I know we used to at Channel 19 when we did that game every year. You had a whole hour-long pregame show and all that kind of thing. But, hey, money's money. And I think it's still a huge deal.
I'm with you. I'm just to be clear, I'm fully with you. I had some people asking me last night about it, and I go, it's the classic. Has the shootout, has it lost some of its shine? Obviously not.
No,
not
it
at
has
all.
not lost its shine. And by the way, I never want to forget, and I'm not going to do it moving forward. We've talked about this already. After Coach Horn came on the program, he was unbelievable. NKU beat Tennessee Tech last night. 85-77.
Yeah, and Marquez Works scored 45 points, set a program record.
And I think I heard the coach on the radio say that he played point guard virtually the entire game and had 1 turnover, along with the 45 points. We're going to talk about the World Cup, briefly albeit, but after a shocking draw with England, it comes down to 1 game for the United States men's team. It will play Iran tomorrow. And the winner will advance to the next round. This is a huge game for the U.S. men's and men's soccer. All right, gentlemen, coming up on the program today for everybody, we have Zim Who Day. What would it be without Zim Who Day? I mean, that guy was dancing in the streets probably most of last night through the streets of Washington, D.C., or out in the woods outside of Washington, D.C. We have Brian Billick coming up. He will be joining us a little after 11. And we're going to talk with him a lot about the Bengals. Normally we try and talk about some other things going on around the league, but all of a sudden, I noticed Skip Bayless this morning, among others. Here come the Bengals. Because now we mentioned they've won 7 of 9. They're looking better and better every week. One thing I failed to mention, you go back to that playoff game. They've won 3 in a row over Tennessee, by the way, now. But in that playoff game last year, when the Bengals were the 4 seed and Tennessee was a 1 seed, the Bengals, of course, win the game. Joe Burrow was sacked 9 times in that game. He was sacked once yesterday. And I give it up to Collins, man. I mean, that dude, he's playing hurt. I give it up to the whole group. As the season has gone on, they have gotten better and better and better and better, and they are peaking at the right time. They've got a tough road to hoe. There's no doubt about that. But now you're starting to look at how they stack up against the elite of the elite. And I don't know about you, but after watching Buffalo on Thanksgiving Day, that's a beatable team. And the way the Bengals are playing right now, Zim Who said it 4 weeks ago. Who wants to play the Cincinnati Bengals? And then coming up at 11:35, we had Dan Hoard. And I'm really looking forward to visiting with Dan because of the Luke Fickell situation and the names that will come up for that job. I said a little while ago, and I know there are a lot of guys that are going to want this job. Tom Herman has expressed interest in getting back into coaching, former offensive coordinator under Urban Meyer, left to become the head football coach at Texas. He had some good years there. Not good enough for that alumni, but he had some decent years there, and he's a good football coach. But I still maintain the guy that I would give serious consideration to is Dion Sanders. What this guy has done at Jackson State, they're undefeated this year, first time in program history. He signed the number 1 high school recruit in the country. Number 1. Number 1. He signed him to come to Jackson State. Imagine what he could do here. And, of course, not roots, but he has said many, many times in his short stint with the Cincinnati Reds as a baseball player, Dion very much enjoyed the city of Cincinnati and the people in Cincinnati. Guys, look, Brandon Sejo is here today. You're a UC guy. And I know you can jump up and go over the microphone here, but I'm interested. When I brought up that name before we went on the air today about Dion Sanders, you weren't all that fired up about it.
I would be fired up for Dion Sanders. He's done, obviously, an incredible job down there at Jackson State. I'm a Dion fan, always have been. I don't know if that's the right fit for UC, but I'm open to it. I mean, I think you said he recruited the number 1 player in the country. He obviously changed the program at Jackson State. That's on that level of football. I'm interested to see what his coaching staff would look like. But, I mean, shoot, can you imagine the rush of PR, recruiting, if you get a guy like Dion in there? I mean, I like Dion. I like Tom Herman. I like Minter's son, defense coordinator at Michigan. Those are kind of my names. Throw Urban Meyer in there.
Who?
Urban Meyer. That'd be cool, right?
You have to at least make Urban you have to at least let Urban say no, right?
Well, there's no doubt about it.
I mean, you have to at least make him say no.
Yeah, the only 3. The only 3 sales pitches you could hand to Urban. Number 1, he's an alum.
Yeah.
UC grad. Played football there. He has family, immediate family. Both of his sisters live here in Cincinnati. And number 3, they're going to the Big 12. Because if you would have any hope, and I would say there's no chance, but I'm not Urban Meyer. The only chance you have a chance of landing a guy like him is the knowledge that he would have a chance to get to the college football playoff. And in the Big 12, you have that chance.
And with 12 teams now.
Well, you're going to that in 2 years from now. But I'm just saying, even with the talent he's going to have coming back, if he were to shock us all and think about taking it, moving into the Big 12, and look no further than TCU, you can go to the college football playoff if TCU wins over Kansas State this weekend.
Just to be clear, I am 1,000% in support of Dion Sanders becoming the next UC head coach.
Okay.
You sold me under when we came over.
You know,
here.
one guy I don't want to dismiss outright is Kerry Combs.
Yeah, no, I think Kerry's going to get an interview. John Cunningham said yesterday he's going to listen, and Kerry has a long history in Cincinnati. Obviously coached at Ohio State, was with the Titans, and has been back at UC this last year or so. I think he's going to get a fair interview. And
he is the interim head coach and will coach them in, they'll find out what bowl game they're in. All of that final, the final college football playoff rankings come out Sunday after all the championship games are played, conference championship games. So you announce who the Final Four, and then, all the bowl games are announced, and you see clearly. With only 3 losses on the year, is going to play in a pretty big bowl game. It's not going to be a New Year's Six bowl game like it's been the last couple of years, but it's going to be a big-time bowl game. All right. We got about 15 minutes before we get to Zim Who Day. So let's start, fellas, with the Bengals. I know you gave us a broad stroke, Casey McCall. First of all, before we go any further, everybody's Thanksgiving good. Paul, even though you were out in Oregon, let me start with you, Paul. What did you do to celebrate?
Did you see the picture I tweeted?
Besides, say a prayer.
Did you see the picture that I tweeted of my Thanksgiving meal?
Yes.
How sad was that?
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, so
you're a big-time operator. You're out there with the Big East and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. They tried. It was a good the media meal was turkey, cornbread stuffing, and some green beans, and I kind of got the last of everything, and it was a tough scene. I'll be honest, it was a tough scene, but it was fine. I mean, look, I'm honestly glad that I got anything because just the way that the schedules were lining up, it was kind of tough to get anything running back and forth between the arenas through the week. But no, Thanksgiving was great. Thanksgiving was really good. I got to watch basketball all day, so it was great.
It's not a bad day.
Not a bad day.
Yeah, I had a good time. Spent time with my family first. That was the first Thanksgiving. Then in-laws over at their house, and then this last Sunday we had the last Thanksgiving dinner with her grandparents and watched the Bengals game, and that was a joy, of course. Very thankful.
Absolutely.
There you go, Casey.
So much to be thankful for. There's no doubt about it. We have a slew of people that are on here today. I mean, some of the usual suspects and some that I haven't seen necessarily before. Maybe you guys have. Anonymous says, Dion should stay where he is, and I hope he can possibly win a national title with Jackson State. Garrett Riley, interesting, Alex, you would say Garrett Riley. He came to mind for me as well. Garrett Riley, for those of you that don't know, is the brother of Lincoln Riley, the head coach at USC. Garrett Riley is the defensive coordinator at TCU. That's an interesting name.
How much value are we putting in the UC job compared to other vacancies?
I think if they weren't going into the Big 12, I think that's a legitimate question. I do.
But you think because the Big 12 jumped that's enough to –
No doubt. No doubt. Your recruiting base expands. You're going into Texas. You're going into Oklahoma. You're going into all these places. I can't imagine what it's going to do for TCU's recruiting this year and having the kind of year they're having, whether or not they win the conference championship game on Saturday night or not. But, yeah, I mean, the facilities have clearly been upgraded. They continue to be upgraded. They know you're going to have to spend more money if you want to recruit with the big boys now in the Big 12. One name that I think you have to give serious consideration, and I'm not so sure at the end of the day of all the guys out there that I would not bring in first would be Brian Hartline at Ohio State. Former great receiver at Ohio State, outstanding pro receiver for many years. He has been the wide receivers coach under Ryan Day for the last 3 years, and I think universally he is considered to be the best position coach recruiter in the country of any school. And look no further than all the wide receivers they had there at Ohio State. And then he coaches them up. You got to think about Brian Hartline. Born and raised Ohio guy, got to think about Hartline.
I like that. I like that move. I also like the Dion Sanders thing, and then the Riley's brother, Lincoln Riley's brother. What was it?
You don't like Urban, leader of men?
Urban
needs to go back to Ohio State. That's where Urban needs to go back.
Well, look, give us some thoughts on Ohio State, Tom.
Well, look, I love Ryan Day, and I think in what, 3 years, 4 years as head coach, he's lost 4 games or something ridiculous. I mean, come on, right? But it's Ohio State. I was up there at the game on Saturday with my kids, and they jump out, they score the touchdown right down the field, they get a field goal on their second try. Then all of a sudden Michigan, hits a big play. They're blitzing all the time, blah, blah, blah. But if there's one play in that game that epitomizes the difference between Urban Meyer and Ryan Day, it was when Ohio State was down by 4 in the third quarter. They've got the ball at the Michigan 45, barely past midfield. It's 4th down and 4. And Ryan Day decides to punt. If you watch it on television, C.J. Stroud is pleading his case, we got to go. The entire offense pleading its case, we got to go. They send the punt unit onto the field when you have, in theory, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in college football. Number 1 pick, first-round pick in the upcoming draft. You have wide receivers, the best wide receiver in the country in Marvin Harrison Jr. And you got weapons everywhere, and on 4th and 4, down 4 at home to Michigan, you're punting. Cannot happen, and if Urban was there, would never have happened. He is going for the gusto. And just sitting in the stands, 107,000, it was a state of shock when they sent the punt team out on that, because as soon as they punted it, Michigan goes 80 yards, and that's on the defense. That's not on Ryan Day. But they go 80 yards, score a touchdown, they go up 11, and in essence, for all intents and purposes, game over.
So you're a firm believer that it wasn't the Joes that were the issue. It was the coaching that lost Ohio State the game.
Well, look, I'm not saying that the coaches – look, the players have to play. The players have to play. And, Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator, has done a phenomenal job this year, first year, but they brought him in to stop Michigan's run game. They stopped the run game. But it just goes to show you, all the experts say, so-called experts, me one of them included, you stop the run game, you win the game. J.J. McCarthy, if you don't know his story, Chicago kid, his entire life only wanted to go to Ohio State. And when it came down to recruiting of McCarthy and C.J. Stroud's backup this year, Kyle McCord, Ohio State offered McCord the scholarship and not McCarthy. He then went on as a high school senior, a social media rampage, killing Ohio State and saying he was going to go to Michigan and he was going to beat Ohio State. Well, lo and behold, look what happened. How about that story?
I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
It's all the kid wanted to do. It's where I spent Thanksgiving. Family that I was with up there, they live right down the street from J.J. McCarthy's parents.
Is he a true freshman or is he a
No,
redshirt?
he's a sophomore.
Sophomore, okay.
Yeah. So he played a little bit last year, was not the starter, went in, splitting time at the beginning of this year. And look, at the end of the day, he basically guys were wide open because Ohio State's selling out on the blitz. to try and hit him, and he got rid of the ball. Give him all the credit in the world. And I think they had 4 plays in that game of 60 or more yards, and I mean guys wide open.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like McCarthy just was tearing them up. They had wide open guys. I mean, he was like 50% completion percentage, but he had like almost 300 yards. I mean, it's just an insane day for Michigan. I thought it was more of a coach's thing too, honestly. I thought the scheme did not do them any favors. I mean, they sold out to stop the run, and the safeties were not disciplined enough. They just let things get past them way too many times. And you think going into halftime that would be coached up, but it happened almost immediately at the beginning of halftime.
Yep.
I'm like, this game's over. They're going to start playing back. They're going to play 2 deep safety, and then they're going to start running the ball a little bit more effectively, and that's what happened. That Michigan started running the ball more effectively as soon as they switched it up, and that was that. That's all she wrote.
I want to get into, before Zim Who Day comes on, I want to get into, with you guys, your thoughts of where we are now with this college football playoff. Because the top 3 are no-brainers, okay? And let's just assume Georgia beats LSU. And that's not a layup, but you would think they're going to win. Michigan is playing Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Again, you just never know. I mean, Michigan almost lost a week ago to Illinois at home. Anything can happen. And of the opponents there, Kansas State, of those 3 championship games, Kansas State, TCU's opponent, is playing the best of any of those teams of the group of Purdue, Kansas State, and LSU. But if all 3 of those teams win, lead pipe cinch, they're in. Do you guys believe that if SC wins against Utah, they're in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty cut and dry. This is like what we've been saying for the last couple of weeks, right, where we have all these debates, we go back and forth about it for a while, but then in the end it really just plays itself out and you get a pretty clear answer of it. I think we have a pretty clear answer of what it's going to be right now if all 4 teams win. I think the only question, and we talked about this before we went on the air, I think the only thing that's going to be worth looking at tomorrow night in the playoff rankings is whether Alabama or Ohio State is higher at 5 and 6.
Yep.
Because whichever one of those 2 teams is behind the other, their season is done because neither one of them can help each other or help themselves. So whichever one of those 2 teams is ranked lower, their season's over. Unless something crazy was to happen, like all 4 teams lost and, like it was just total chaos.
Right.
But effectively, if Alabama is at 5 and Ohio State is at 6 and SC was to lose, does Alabama get in at 2 losses over a 1-loss Ohio State team?
That's $1 million question.
That's what the committee would set it up as. Now, if Ohio State is at 5 and Alabama is at 6, then Ohio State's back in at 4.
Yeah.
We're doing this whole song and dance over again.
Yeah, you're not going to get a leapfrog from 6 to 4 if there's an opening.
No,
you're not going to make a leapfrog
no,
6 to 4.
No.
It's not going to happen because neither Alabama nor Ohio State is playing in its conference championship game. Their seasons are over. So, then you get into all the chaos. I think if Michigan or Georgia were to lose, I think both of them are in. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The way Michigan looked against Ohio State, they beat Penn State. I think Michigan, with 1 loss, it's not going to happen, but if it did happen, they would still get in, and Georgia would certainly still get in. If TCU loses, well, does TCU get in ahead of Ohio State? I would make the argument, even as an Ohio State fan, I would make the argument if you had a 1-loss Ohio State team against a 1-loss TCU team, that TCU deserves to get in.
They have a lot of top 25 wins.
They got a whole – I think they have more than any team in the country.
They do.
I think they have 5 or 6 top 25 wins.
They have a great resume. I don't know how you could keep them out at 1 loss. If you're just putting the 2 resumes back against each other.
Agreed.
I would probably put TCU in.
But do you think that would happen?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Do you think that would happen?
Yeah, probably not.
I'd like to think TCU would still get in, but, man, I've never sat in any of those committee meeting rooms. I'm sure the conversations are just extraordinary. To just sit back, not even to record them, but just to sit back and listen to them. That if you got into a scenario where, what if both USC and TCU got beaten? I know we're doing a lot of what ifs here, but look, these are the kinds of things that the committee is thinking about already. You can take it to the bank.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to come out with their top 4 tomorrow night, but the top 4 tomorrow night is a no-brainer. I mean, there's not any discussion. The only discussion is going to be Ohio State, Alabama 5-6. That's it. The rest of it, irrelevant. But the top 4 are set. But you can book it that they will be sitting around talking today, tomorrow about, okay, now let's play the scenario game of what if you're taking it as a given, that Georgia and Michigan, should they get upset in their conference championship game, are still going in, and both should still go in. But if USC were to lose, who is in?
I mean, I'm just going off of the interview we had with Urban the other day. He made the claim that Michigan and Ohio State deserved to be at 2 and 3. Those were actually top 4 teams. If you look at the tape, they stand out above the rest. I would have to say that OSU gets in at 4 if TCU and USC loses. I don't know which one. I don't know if Alabama gets in then or how that would play out. I would love for TCU to stay, even if they lose in their conference championship, but I just don't see it. USC losing to Utah again depends on how they lose. If they lose again on like the 2-point conversion, then
USC's done if they lose. They're done.
You think so?
2 losses, they're done.
Yeah,
they'll
be done.
They're done.
Because they'll put a 1-loss TCU, 1-loss Ohio State.
Yep. Maybe even
2-loss
Alabama. Although, we were talking off the air a little bit here about the whole Alabama thing. We're talking about TCU and all the wins against top 25 teams. When you go back, and I went back last night and looking at Alabama's season. Now, the argument could certainly be made that you take maybe 4 or 5 plays of the whole year and Alabama's undefeated right now, okay? But they're not. But when you look at who they have beaten this year, okay? They beat Texas when they knocked Quinn Ewers out of the game, second game of the year. They barely beat them. Texas lost 4 games this year. They have ranked wins against Mississippi and Mississippi State. Both 4-loss teams.
Yeah.
And Miss completely disintegrated down the stretch. They had 1 loss 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're sitting there going, would Alabama, make the argument that they should leapfrog Ohio State or TCU or, take an SC out of the mix, because if they win, they're in. All right, is Zim with us yet or no?
No.
All right, I'll shoot him a text real quick. We'll take a timeout, and we're back with Off the Bench right after this.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
Last night. I hope TJ Watt likes eating grass because I fed him like a mule when Lyle Collins was laying on his back. We like pancakes and I put syrup on that boy. I fed that man. Put syrup on him. That's what we doing. We're pancaking the league this year, baby. Let's go.
That's Zim Who Day. I mean, does it get any better than that guy? Look at him. That's a real fan. It's a real man. I love that guy.
Also, when I lost in Anaheim, my dad was at the game, and my dad was down and out and sad. And see, back then the older generation, a lot of times they would use negative motivation as like you can't do this or hey man, you won't do that. Where nowadays you can't use negative motivation, to the young kids because a lot of them would just sit out on you and quit. What I mean? So my dad. Never forget, and I've told people this, he told me, he said, son, I don't know if you'll ever win one, a pennant or not. We didn't win it that year in San Francisco because, we had them down, you know what I mean? And he says, I don't know if you'll ever win one, after this. And that's the first thing that I thought about was say, hey, Dad, you're wrong again. I mean, I swear that's the first thing I thought about. Dad, you're wrong.
Everybody wants to say, Dad, you're wrong, right? That was so great having Dusty Baker on a couple of weeks ago. We had Urban Meyer last week and working on Bob Huggins this week. They play this coming week, right, against West Virginia Friday night.
Saturday night.
Saturday night, forgive me.
Yeah.
At the Cintas Center. All right. The man, the myth, the legend. He was a guy who said about 3 weeks ago, go ahead and stick your chest out, Zim. Zim Who Day joins us. Right there, savage mode. You were the guy that said it. We run the clip all the time, even when I'm not going to say darkest hour, because it certainly wasn't the darkest hour. But you were the guy that said, look, Tom, nobody wants to face the Bengals.
Did you see Zach Taylor's speech yesterday?
I did.
He might be watching your show because he said exactly the same words.
I think he might be watching Cincinnati.
He might be watching Cincinnati. Hey, real quick, before we get into I want to say something about what I think Brandon Sejo is doing with the mental health show.
Yeah.
That I just saw the commercial. Amazing. That is something that has to be talked about, and I'm so glad he's doing that. I, too, struggled with depression earlier in my life. I got older. I learned a lot of different things. I woke up some days, and then I said, you know what? Live today like it's your last. That's why it's hard for me to sit stagnant in like a negative spot because I've gone through a lot. And I think a lot of people got to have those conversations. And I think as men, in any color, they tell us don't cry or they tell you what to do. But what they don't do is tell you to have somebody directly there that loves you and that wants to hear what you got to say or about any of your problems. I call my friends and I give them wellness checks all the time. And I don't call and just say, hey, bro, you all right? Like I actually say, let's go meet up. Let me talk to you directly in the space. And I think shows like that have to be done because they teach us not to express ourselves. It translates to sports too. They don't like me saying all this positive stuff about the Bengals for some odd reason, but I just keep on going. But I just wanted to commend them for that show. We need more of that. And
I think Brandon, that's very kind of you to point out. And Brandon's in here right now, and I'm sure he appreciates it. I think he ought to have you on the show.
Let's do it. He knows my number. Hit me up. We could talk. I've always had confidence, but I had some times where, I didn't know. Maybe my son helped me out with that. My wife helped. But I lean on people around. I lean on Tom, You
don't lean on me, brother. You'd be barking up the wrong tree. Brandon, you want to jump in there?
I won't be able to hear what Zim's saying because I don't have a headset on, but I was listening on YouTube. Thank you, Zim. That means a lot. And I do have your number. It's just a matter if you reply or not.
Hit me up, bro. I got you.
I can't hear what he said back.
He said hit him up. He says you know better than that.
I know. Love you, Zim.
All right, Zim. Let's get to it. Your overall impressions of the Cincinnati Bengals and the victory yesterday over the Tennessee Titans.
Business as usual. I like to post a lot of receipts beforehand. For whatever reason, there were a lot of people that just didn't think that we would win the football game, and I didn't understand it. Maybe because I'm a homer. Maybe I'm just a Bengals fan. I just didn't get it. Even without Jamar Chase, I just didn't get it, and I still don't. I look at different things in that game, in the Steelers game, and I think that some of the early calls made the score even better than what it probably could have been. But it is what it is. It's football. Tennessee plays a tough brand of football, highly respected, no joke. They're going to give a lot of teams some problems, and we might see them again. But it's business as usual. Like, we are who we say we are, and I keep on asking people, I don't know why anybody would doubt a team with a top 10 defense coming into the game. Now it's probably top 8 after the game, right?
Yep.
Top 10 defense, top 5 quarterback, top 3 wide receiving core, great kicker. Look at these teams that they're crowning around us. Have you seen the month of Josh Allen? Have you seen the month of, like some of these other guys that they saying, like the Chiefs? Yeah, they got some stuff. Like, I like them, but you think they're explosive as the Bengals with Jamar Chase? They're not. They're a good team. They got a great coach, and I respect them. But people got to understand we're the defending conference champions for a reason. It's not by luck. It's not by chance. It's a well-assembled team. It's always any given Sunday. But the teams that everybody's saying that we got to play or whatever, they're looking at us. Go read their stuff on Twitter. Go talk. Go look. Like, I'm in Twitter spaces. I go and sit in their spaces sometimes and listen to them talk. They don't want to play the Bengals. I don't know why Bengals fans are acting like, oh, man, we got a tough one. Like, they're thinking the same thing about you. Maybe they aren't telling you directly, but I promise you, the Bengals are still the most dangerous team in the National Football League. Joe Burrow just did that. 280 yards with no Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. Who's doing that? Nobody. Nobody's doing this. And every single week we keep on showing you, but for whatever reason, maybe it's a good thing that we're underdogs, and maybe it's a good thing that we're back against the wall. But at some point, the narrative is going to leave, and I'm going to just be sitting here with my chest poked out again, saying, hey, Tom, look at me. Look at this big old chest. I haven't been going to the gym, but you know what I've been doing? I've been telling all these people online that we're the real deal. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I mean, you have been the guy all along that has said it. The thing, Zim, the thing that surprised me, okay, and I'm going to be honest about it, because I wondered if the Bengals could be a smash you in the mouth physical football team. Oftentimes when you got guys like Burrow, I mean, you of course you want Joe Burrow throwing the ball and the receivers they have, even minus Chase, they still got really good players, and they had some guys step up, which we'll get to in a minute. But, Tennessee, I think, is sort of the standard, if you will, in the NFL for playing physical smash mouth football. That's who they are. They don't pretend to be anything else. And yet the Bengals, I thought, were more physical yesterday. Now, be honest. Did that surprise you a little bit, Zim? Come on now.
Tom, we went there last year with guys off the street like Zach Kerr that people have never even heard of, and Clay Johnsons of the world, and stopped them boys on 2-point conversions and 4th downs and 1s. We got the heart of a champion in us. You know, we haven't done what we set out to do, you know, as far as like our goals on world championships. But put this into perspective. You're a little bit older than me, just a little bit. The Colts are the only team that has won a championship out of that division. Probably the weakest division in football. It's a reason why the Ravens, that's the only one. You could go back to the AFL East or something like that and grab another championship. But as long as the current conference, the way that the division, the way it's set up, is the Peyton Manning Colts. But yet you got these guys, or at least they're telling me online, the Bengals are poverty or whatever. Bro, we have to play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cleveland Browns every year, who house the most championships like in all the professional sports. Anybody calling the Bengals finesse or like something that they're not because they like Joe Burrow looking cool with some cool hair and Jamar Chase posing for GQ are sadly mistaken, because the DJ Readers of the world are the guys that are unheralded, the guys that they don't talk about, but they're a force. And it's been like this. It's been like this. When it was whether it was Geno Atkins or Pecco or Coy Bacon or all these guys, you had to be tough or you couldn't be in the North. In the last 10 years, the Bengals had 3 division championships and the Ravens had 3 and the Steelers have 4. The Bengals have always been smash mouth up front. 2005 houses one of the best offensive line smash mouth up front. Maybe in you know, like in my recent memory, you know, I'm not an older guy, but like anybody telling you that the Titans are so smash mouth, look who they're smashing the mouths of. Hello? Like you wouldn't do that in the AFC North. Come on, bro.
No, in fact, Charles Davis, who was a color commentator on the game yesterday, shared a conversation he had in getting ready for the game with Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator, who said that Tennessee, in a complimentary way, he said this, that Tennessee, in his opinion, was an AFC North kind of team. And that's who they are. But you're right, as far as who you got to play every year. And look, you know, Cleveland has certainly had the Bengals number the last couple of years, whether that happens a second time. We're a couple of weeks off from that game. But the other area I want to ask you about, and I don't know if it's fair because, look, there's some people that really like Tannehill. There's some people that think Tannehill's just okay and he's a game manager and all those kinds of things. The secondaries play yesterday. We know they shut down Henry in the run game. What were your impressions as they're starting to piece together the personnel and who's going to play, who's not going to play in that secondary? Because, look, we know who they're playing this coming week, right? The Chiefs know they have to face Burrow, but the Bengals know they have to face Mahomes.
I like the secondary, bro. I thought Eli Apple made play after play yesterday. I think there was the out route with the tight end that I know he got turned around on. It's football. The Cam Taylor-Britt plays 2 weeks in a row. I'm sorry. He didn't happen to him last week, but the week prior to that, remember he goes for the jump ball. He's there with the guy like in his first action. I'm going to tell you one thing about Cam Taylor-Britt and Eli Apple too. When you're watching the games and when you're there at the games, because I was there for one of those games, I don't know if there's a corner hitting like him. When he was drafted, I was told he was the most physical cornerback, you know, coming out of the draft. And I'm not a big college football guy, but he put the wood on Derrick Henry yesterday, and he hit. Coverage standpoint, yes. I don't believe that the Bengals are elite coverage, right? But take away the 60, 70-yard screen. Tannehill throws for, like 220 or something like that?
Yeah.
I thought he played a pretty good game. Quick trigger. Tannehill's not a bum. You know what I'm saying? But take that same Titans team just 2 weeks ago. Had they had Tannehill in that game, they probably would have dropped the Chiefs off by like 7-10 points. Malik Willis plays and only throws, 5-10 times or something like that?
That's right.
And they end up losing the game or whatever. But Tannehill is only let me tell you what happens when the Bengals play somebody. Whenever anybody plays the Bengals after the game, they say, oh, well, this team wasn't really whatever. By DVOA standpoint, the Titans were like a top 3 team, like scoring points per, red zone efficiency, run defense, all these different things. After we beat them, it's just the Titans. They're going to do that until the Bengals win a championship. And then when they get a championship, they're going to say, oh, well, you only got one. You see what I'm saying? It's a never-lasting thing. But as far as the cornerback play goes, it's not elite. It is one of the weaknesses of the team. And I think a bigger weakness is the lack of pass rush. And I think the pass rush will aid those guys in coverage. I do think that the secondary, though, however, are really good tacklers. And I really like the way that they play mistake-free football. And, you saw it happen to the kid for the Titans on Christian Fulton and McCready. There's going to be some jump balls. Treylon Burks is a big guy. He's going to get some of those. It happens. It's a 50. I like to think that sooner or later we're going to get a couple of those. But, we're not getting beat, like getting pass baits, stuff like that. Those are the things I'm really looking for. If you win in 50-50 balls, it is what it is to me. And I didn't think that the Titans played the game that they wanted to play. And as a defensive coordinator, that's what you want to do. Get them out of what they want to do.
Well, I'm not going to call you, Zim, the lone voice in the wilderness, but you are a woodsy sort of man, as we've talked about many, many times before. And if you weren't the only one out there, you were one of very few who said all along, just keep your eye on the Bengalis.
Man, I'm telling you, look, if one thing you're going to find about me is if just like I came on the show and told you about Jonah Williams, I'm going to tell you if somebody isn't playing well, when I tell you that this team is the most dangerous team in football, that's from a lover of football. Can they be beat? Hell yeah, they could get beat. The referees could beat us. The referees almost
you
took us
always complain about the officials, Zim. Good Lord. You got to let that stuff go.
Be for real. We could be beat, but I'm telling you right now, as far as like the eye test without Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon, you put up you don't forget the field goal at the end negated the field goal, right there. Had you needed a touchdown, you probably could have got you put up damn near 30 points on the Titans.
That's right.
Yep. And that's one of the better defense. That's a top 3 defense to me. And that's what I do know. And I don't think the Bengals struggled at any point in that game moving the football. The 2 drives, like the one got negated with the Chris Evans offensive pass interference one, and then the other call too. They never had a chance driving. And then when they did have the punt, Drew Chrisman came through.
Yeah,
Drew
he did.
Chrisman
He
season.
had a
Maybe
really
it's almost
good
close
game.
to Christmas.
Yep.
Great
game.
game.
He had a really good game.
He was booming.
There's no doubt.
He was
There's
8 yards deep in our end zone and sent it to their 40. Like, that is crazy field switch. They had 4 red zone trips, 3 field goals and 1 missed field goal. That's championship football.
Yes,
right
it
there.
is. There's no doubt.
To you.
And that has been the one constant through this whole thing outside of the one game against Cleveland. The one constant for this team, where there's been some ebbs and flows offensively, although trending in the right direction, the defense has been fantastic. There's no doubt about it. All right, Zim, we're going to let you go. We're going to have you back at the end of the week, if you're able, to really get into previewing the Bengals v. Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead on Sunday.
I would love to talk about that game. It's a big game, Tom. Big game.
It's a big game.
I'm going to tell you, though, I expect to win.
All right. Zim, you're the man. I just want to make sure that game, yeah. No, I'm sorry. It's here on Sunday. Forgive me. I don't know what the heck I'm thinking about. It's here. Are you coming back to that game, by the way, before we let you go?
Tom, I'll come back. I ever tell you the time I was there? Look, I'm going to tell you something. If you're struggling with any Bengals, I was down 21-3 at Arrowhead. 21-3. Nothing but red around me. I look around, the guys like everybody's laughing. They were dancing in my face. I was down 21-3. I'm going to tell everybody, I look right ahead of me, 1 row ahead of me. You know who was there?
Who?
Coach Burrow. He looked at me. I gave him this wink, and it was go time from there. And I ain't looked back since. I was down 21-3 at Arrowhead. Coach Burrow did that for me. And after that, we had drinks. We celebrated, and we said, hey, tell them people, don't ever doubt the Bengals or never estimate the heart of a champion. Don't you ever do it.
You're the man, Zim. We love you, buddy. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up at the end of the week.
Peace out.
Amen. That's the man right there. I mean, fellas, that's the man.
He is the man.
He is the man, as they like to say.
He's my man.
He's your man?
He's my man.
And why would that be? Because he's always always Mr. Optimism on the Bengals?
Absolutely. I mean, like when I need a pick me up, he always knows exactly what to say. Whether that's on Twitter or his show or whatever. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Cincinnati podcast because the guy he will make your day.
There's no doubt. I mean, I have to admit, he really does make your day. He brings so much to this program. I'm so grateful that you guys were able to track him down and that he has been a willing participant to come on a couple of times a week. We got to get his buddy Ace Boogie back.
Yeah.
I think next time we can't, maybe at the end of the week, they are the co-host, if you don't know, of the podcast Cincinnati. I think we got to get them on at the same time.
Yeah, we can do that.
Are we able to do that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Paul, what are your thoughts of that?
Well,
like both of them at the same time, or you just like Zim as a standalone guy?
I think doing it once or twice and getting them both in the same room together in this environment and putting us all just stirring the pot together, I think that'd be fun.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Coming up here in a few minutes, we have Brian Billick. We're going to talk more about the Bengals. Is the national perception now starting to swing in the Bengals' favor? Also going to talk about Baltimore. This is the second or third week in a row where the Ravens really don't look very good on offense.
Nope.
And remember, early in the year, the Ravens had a couple of meltdowns there in the fourth quarter late in games where they blew games. They did score, I think it was 13 in the fourth quarter, but they gave up 18 in the fourth quarter to a Jacksonville team that through the first three quarters had managed a total of 10 points in the game. So, he's really dialed in and tuned in to what the Ravens have going on and where they are through all this kind of thing. And we'll talk to him a little bit about the Bengals. That and more. If there's something that you would like me to ask him about, please chime in on the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll get to some of your comments after this timeout.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
United Dairy Farmers. He's kind enough to give us his time once a week on the program. Former NFL Super Bowl winning head coach with the Baltimore Ravens, Brian Billick. And yet here he is today, the front runner that he is, The 49ers pitch a shutout, even though you did spend time with the 49ers as a player, I might add, in all fairness, that you're sporting the Niners shirt today.
Yeah, if only for the fact that if it's free, it's me. This is part of the swag we get when we used to do games. I got a Cincinnati shirt. I should have worn the Cincinnati shirt, so I'll do that next time.
Well, both those teams are coming off very impressive wins. The Niners pitch a shutout. The Bengals, just reading some of the stuff nationally, Brian, it seems like a lot of people, you start the season 0-2, you're going to get a lot of this. And you were talking about all this and their struggles, all the sacks, 13 of them the first couple of games. But it seems like there are people all of a sudden that are basically saying, watch out, here come the Bengals. Are they starting to look like that kind of team to you?
Yeah, I was in Nashville over the holiday, and this was a huge win for Cincinnati because once on the road, we always talk about and the value I put on the ability to win on the road against a good team. Without Joe Mixon, without Chase, and to go on the road, limit Derrick Henry and that offense to under 75 yards rushing, and Joe Burrow have the efficient game that they did, stayed with the run. This was a substantial win. This is one that you put a mark on late in the season that says, okay, we'll see how things parlay out. We could have the same conversation about every team in the NFL right now. I can give you 2 or 3 reasons on a handful of teams why they're going to go to the Super Bowl and why they're not going to go to the Super Bowl. So yeah, there's always, you can poke holes in over when you've had 8, 10, 12 games. But in Tennessee, a team that was playing very, very well, shorthanded to win the way they did, this was a substantial win for the Bengals.
Brian, the Bengals, I think, went through the first 7 games of the year, and we talked about it at the time, their defense. Everybody wants to talk about their offense, and rightfully so when you get all the pieces back and that kind of thing. But, their defense, they lost the guy, at least according to Pro Football Focus, that through the first 10 weeks of a season was the highest-rated cover corner in the league, in Awuzie. He goes down with a season-ending knee injury. But they went the first 7 games of the year, didn't allow a second-half touchdown. And then you look what they did yesterday. I'm not going to ask you, statistically you can say, yeah, they're top 8, they're top 10. But when you watch them play, is there anything for you that really stands out about their defense above maybe some other areas of the defense?
It's solid. And that sounds like that's kind of a menial comment. But they're a good, solid defense. They don't put themselves at risk. We've talked about our toxic differential way back when, how important it is to generate big plays, not give up big plays, get turnovers, and not turn the ball over. And from that standpoint, I think, it's a good mix with what they're doing offensively. Now, we're going to find out real quick next week against the Chiefs as to really are indeed the Bengals still at that Super Bowl champion level, because obviously the Chiefs are playing as well as anybody, but have shown some vulnerabilities as well. And defensively have, the Bengals can, don't turn it into a track meet. Just don't give up the big plays. And can Cincinnati play that game with the Chiefs? I think they can. So, we're going to find out real quick whether they're there, and doesn't mean they can't continue to improve as well, but whether they're there right now with the Chiefs and the fact that they're at home, the Chiefs coming in. This is a good litmus test going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Cincinnati beat them twice last year, and both times coming from behind, including the AFC Championship game on the road in Kansas City last January. Shifting gears to the Ravens. Look, they've found a way to win, so you give them all the credit in the world. But here recently, after it looked like they were starting to do one of these, offensively now, they look like they're kind of starting to do one of these. They did get 27 yesterday, so, there's nothing wrong with 27. You would think most times, especially against Jacksonville, that 27 points is going to be enough to win the game. But when you watch them play, where do you think they are right now? They're tied record-wise with the Bengals. They hold the tie break with the win over Cincinnati earlier this year. Baltimore still has to come to Cincinnati for the final game of the season. What's going on in Baltimore?
Well, they're like everybody in the league right now. They're among that handful of 3, 4, 5 teams in the AFC that you can make a case for making a run through the playoffs. The most telling thing from the game yesterday was the fact that they were 2 of 5 in the red zone. That when you get down there, because they did move the ball up and down the field pretty good. Their defense is okay. It's not the dominant group that we're used to. That's a pretty high bar to compare to. They don't have the dominant pass rusher, but they're a good, solid defense. They still have to manufacture their pressures. Offensively, again, so unique with Lamar Jackson. But the fact that down in the red zone with a Lamar Jackson, because that typically has been, their formula. Obviously, they get down the red zone, they can run the ball. Lamar can do something special, and they're guaranteed points, obviously, with Tucker. But to be 2 of 5 in the red zone, that's probably the thing that's preoccupying their mind right now. And how telling is that you leave them, which I thought was a mistake to squib kick it the way they did, to leave them one play, to leave Justin Tucker, a 67-year-old. How telling is it, the regard you have for Justin Tucker, where collectively you're going, oh my God, he can make this.
Well,
that's how good this guy is. So they're still have all the elements, but that lack of ability to punch in from the red zone right now has to be the number one thing that they're most concerned with.
When the game last night was very exciting, it had a lot of action. It was you look at the whole this Philadelphia team, and I know they barely got by a week ago against Indianapolis. They won late by 1 point on the road, but like you said earlier, went on the road, and Indy's no pushover. They'll play tonight against the Steelers, but to be 10-1. And it seems like they're the kind of team, Brian, and I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if there's another team from an offensive standpoint that has shown the ability this year where 1 week they can throw it for 330, and then last night they run it for over 350. Now, I know you're not going to run for 350. You're not going to run for 250 most games. I mean, hell, a lot of teams are lucky to get to 150. But they I think they're a really good team. 10-1's 10-1, duh. But they just look like a really, really good football team.
And Jalen Hurst is showing that he can do either one of those things. We've always made that comparison to how is that to Lamar Jackson. And way back when, remember we talked about, I had very respectable scout tell me that Lamar Jackson's a tailback playing quarterback. Jalen Hurst is a fullback playing quarterback, so he's not quite as explosive as Lamar Jackson. But, ran for 150 yards. When you have your quarterback doing that, the difference is that Jalen Hurst, like you said, can maybe go out. I don't know that I'd want to do it every Sunday with Jalen Hurst, but he can go out and throw for 350 yards. I don't know how many times Lamar Jackson, if you just say, okay, we're not going to let you run the ball. We're going to keep you in the pocket, now throw the ball. I think Jalen Hurst is better out of the pocket than Lamar Jackson is. He's not quite the explosive runner, but can still hurt you with the running game. So he's got both elements of it, and they've wrapped the right people around him, playing good, solid defense. The NFC, we can talk about 3, 4, 5 teams in the AFC that are viable. Okay, who's going to be in that championship game? In the NFC, we're down to like 2 or 3, aren't we? So that alone says they're in a good spot right now, and they're clearly that top dog.
Last guy I want to ask you about is Deshaun Watson. He gets a green light he's active, will be active. The Browns have already announced he's going to be the starter this coming Sunday against his old team, the Houston Texans. 2-part question. I'll ask the first part now. What's going to be his biggest challenge after basically not playing over 2 full seasons or certainly the better part of a year and a half?
Yeah, you've got to get into a playing rhythm, and you can only do that in a game. I don't care what you did in the offseason, how much you sat in the meetings, how hard you worked out. Obviously, particularly this late part of the season, he feels really good. He's going to be fresh. So that's kind of dangerous too. I have a huge, like all the issues aside and whatever I'm talking, just as a football player, I have a huge admiration for Deshaun Watson. I think he's a special player. That guy that certainly can beat you outside the pocket, but he could be, if again, we talk about that silly concept of, okay, if the league passes a rule that says you can't leave the pocket, he could beat you from the pocket in a Patrick Mahomes kind of way. I just have that kind of admiration for him on the field. But he's, you can only get into that rhythm. Let's go back to all the conversations we had about to start the season for any of these offenses and the quarterbacks. And, they had limited reps. And, okay, it takes a while. And there's going to be some mistakes that made because you got to get used to the speed of the game that can only be done on game day. So that doesn't mean he can't come out and light it up the first game. But it does take a little bit of while, so I think the expectations need to be tempered a little bit. The good thing, he's playing on a Cleveland team that's kind of out of it. I don't want to say they're out of it.
Right.
They're not, they still have a chance to kind of claw their way through it. But he can kind of play on house money too and kind of just let it go and play. It's not like he's coming in a tough decision, nice decision to have, but a tough one like that if they were 7-4. And Jacoby Brissett's played pretty well. And have to make this tough decision. Now he comes in and has to play with that burden of, oh boy, well the other guy played pretty good and we've won some games. So now, I gotta be a little more judicious about some of the decisions I make and what I do. He can kind of play with house money, which is a good thing to just let it out and let it go.
Well, Coach, we have one of our regulars inside the chat want to know: do you have any interest in the University of Cincinnati head football coaching job?
What a coup from my standpoint. I think Luke Fickell's outstanding.
Yeah,
and I thought, because there were a lot of teams that were going to look, and I thought with the new contract he had, that had kind of solidified him in Cincinnati, which is because he's an outstanding coach, and Wisconsin, I think, did a phenomenal job in getting him. I hate that Cincinnati has to, go around. I don't know. I don't follow. Is there a guy on the staff at Cincinnati?
Well, Kerry Combs, who was a defensive coordinator at Ohio State, he went with Vrabel to the Titans. He came back to Ohio State, then came back to Cincinnati, a high school coach here for many, many years. But he's been the defensive coordinator of this year's team. He's the interim. He's going to get an interview. But word on the street, there's a whole laundry list of guys out there, from Brian Hartline up there at Ohio State to Tom Herman, who used to be at Ohio State in Texas, to Dion Sanders' name. Now what Dion has done down there, Brian, is pretty amazing at Jackson State.
Oh, you have to admire. I talked with Dion a little while ago, and what he has done, he's shown that he can be a legitimate head coach, that he's got, and he paid his dues, so to speak, and he's done a phenomenal job. And I think, now Cincinnati, it's going to cost you now. Dion's not going any place cheap, and it's going to have to be a commitment to because otherwise, why leave Jackson State? I think it would be a huge coup for Cincinnati in a lot of ways. I think it would be to have Dion Sanders there with a lot of issues that maybe Cincinnati has dealt with over the past, could take that step forward as well in terms of a real statement for them. But that would be a tough choice, I think, for Dion. I think he might, because Cincinnati, as wonderful as they've done, still is maybe viewed as that job as you take to make that next step. And that's the difficulty they have.
Yeah, I wonder, Brian, if going into the Big 12 next year changes that. I mean, they've upgraded their facilities. They've got the indoor thing going on. They cracked the college football playoff as a non-Power 5. Now they're going into the Big 12. I just wonder if that kind of momentum, and the fact that, which you probably don't know, I know you're not a big baseball guy, but Dion played for the Reds here in baseball and really liked it here a lot. For him and his family and as a player and with the fans and all those I'm not suggesting that would be the reason he'd take the job. You're right about the money. But I just wonder if the Big 12, knowing what TCU's doing this year, right, and going into the game Saturday night with a chance to be in the playoff.
What's that commitment? You're right. It could be a gold mine in the sense that if indeed they're willing to jump on board and take that next step. Because the key to Dion is that he is totally immersed and locked in to that talent pool. and the agents, which you have to be today with the NIL and all that kind of stuff. And so could Cincinnati, now that they're going to have the bigger platform, could they do what TCU is doing? Yeah, that would be. Now it's going to cost you. I mean, Cincinnati will have to step up. That's what it comes down to anymore is, are you willing to pay the freight? Is there that kind of potential? The only other negative I have, and this is just a side note altogether, is that when you look at the best jobs in college football, the ones that have the best chance to win, they're typically not programs that are in cities that have NFL teams, or your major cities, simply because there is that competition. There's that competition for that dollar. You could say SC would be the outlier in that, and they have been for a while. But you look at the other top schools traditionally, and Georgia's just far enough out of Atlanta and its own sphere out there, but whether it's Alabama, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Clemson, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's now Michigan, the teams that really have a chance that year in, year out say, okay, we've got this conclave that we can spend the money and we can capture it and it can generate it. And the negative to Cincinnati, just like it is in most metropolitan cities, whether it be now in Miami, whether it be in Phoenix and Arizona, that's the challenge for Arizona State now. So many of them, can you compete with an NFL environment? And that's really the stepping stone. So that's the only challenge for. Not that you can't do it, because I think you're exactly right. But it's you got to get the, as Dion created the saying, you're going to pay the man. Pay the buck.
Yes.
Just hit. You have to pay his assistants. You're going to have to set up the NIL program. You're going to have to do it all. But yeah, that would be a hell of a hire.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. All right, Brian, we thank you. That's fascinating insight. Thanks for the time. Have a great rest of your week.
All right, man.
Nothing better than having that guy on. I mean, and that that's an interesting observation none of us took into account, that whole big city thing.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. When he started listing out the names, I was like, God dang, he's got a point. He's got a point. Professional teams in those cities with college teams, are they anywhere near the top 5 right now? I mean,
no.
I don't think so.
No. And people might be saying, wait a minute, what about Ann Arbor? Ann Arbor, just like Athens, Georgia, is just far enough away where it's its own little world there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Ohio State would be the closest thing to a big city school. I mean, even though their campus is, just 3, 4, 5 miles up the road off of downtown.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 miles maybe. Still a big city. Columbus, one of the top, I think, 25, 30 largest cities in the United States. But that was interesting. And he does know Dion well. I remember when we worked together doing NFL games every week, he knows Dion very, very well. So, whether or not at the end of the day UC's really going to talk to him, it's all just, people speculating. I'm no different. You guys are no different. But I think because of the Big 12 thing and because of the way the facilities have improved here over the last couple of years, and we have Dan Hoard coming up in about 10 minutes. But fellas, I think the Big 12 thing is a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
Huge thing. I mean, it's easy to say duh, but somebody could say, well, wait a minute, we went as a non-power 5. Look, the difference between playing in the Big 12 and the American is night and day. It's the minor leagues versus the big leagues.
Yeah. I mean, if any coach, at this point, like if we were to get Dion, I think this is actually a pretty good spot because, you're getting a chance to revitalize the entire program at the highest level. You get to, one, prove yourself as a head coach in the big leagues, in the Big 12, where the competition isn't at its highest level, but it's just good enough to where you can get into the college football playoff and actually make a dent in the college playoff world. And I think is Dion from, where is he from?
He is from Florida.
He's from Florida.
He's from Florida.
I just remembered he was from one of the big football state.
Played at Florida State.
That's right.
And, of course, he came into the NFL. I remember hearing so many nights or days sitting around in the weeks that I'd go in and work with Troy Aikman. And, Dion had already been the best cornerback in the NFL for a number of years. And Troy had always played against him and had incredible respect for him, obviously, if you're trying to complete passes against a guy. But I remember he used to tell the story all the time about when Dion then came to Dallas. And it came time to watching this guy every single day. And they had a confrontation immediately. I think it might have been like the fourth or fifth practice after Dion comes to training camp with the Cowboys. And the Cowboys got all these big stars, right? I mean, they got Urban, they got Emmett, they got Troy, they got Haley. They got them all over the place. But now all of a sudden in walks Dion Sanders. And he's jawing with receivers during practice, talking smack to Aikman when they're going 7-on-7 stuff. And Aikman didn't like it. And the two of them, they butted heads. And Troy realized after they had that conversation, he said he walked away from the conversation saying, you know what? I'm glad this guy's on my team because it's not all just, flash and all this. He said, this guy is coming to play and coming to compete every single down, even in practice.
I think if you hire Dion Sanders, we were talking about this in the break. I think if you hire Dion, it either goes disastrously wrong or it goes spectacularly awesome. And I don't think there's any.
Now, why would you say wrong? I'm just curious. What could go wrong?
I just think that maybe when you look at Dion, and to be very transparent with this, I have not watched one down of Jackson State football. I have not followed that program. I don't know anything about how he's done down there outside of just following a general idea of his record and what he's done to turn the program around. I've read enough articles and stuff to have a general idea, but I'm not sitting here watching Jackson State football every day to know his in-game schematics and coaching decisions. I'm just making a general statement looking at coaches that have come in from lesser programs and taken over a program like you see at a high level that is going to compete at the highest level, that you're taking a risk, I think, by going with a guy like Dion. But maybe for John Cunningham, maybe that's a risk he's willing to take, and it could pay off in spectacular fashion. I think it's one or the other. I think with Dion it would be pretty binary. I don't think with Dion you're getting a 7-6 consistent record. I think he's going to come in there and he's going to win, or he's going to all of a sudden be playing against the big boys at the highest level, and he's going to go,
That's
wait.
fair. That's a fair point. A lot of the folks online throwing out different names. We talked about Tom Herman already. Jolly really likes Matt Campbell at Iowa State. They struggled this year, but he is very highly thought of as Matt Campbell. And we know Kerry Combs is going to get an interview. Brian Hartline's name, I think, is the hottest name of this group, at least initially, just because he's right up the road at Ohio State and all that he has accomplished as a recruiter and as a position coach with the Buckeyes. I mean, they're putting first-round draft picks in the NFL every single year. He's recruiting them, and then he's coaching them up. They had 2 first-round picks. They're the 2 best rookie wide receivers in the NFL this year in Wilson and Olave. Jackson Smith-Njigba misses basically the entire year. He was thought to be the best wide receiver in the country when the season began. He barely plays 3 quarters total for this entire season. Marvin Harrison Jr. then supplants him as the best receiver in college football this year. And a lot of people believe that Hartline would be the right guy here. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have Dan Hoard. And I really can't wait to talk to Dan about a little bit about the Bengals, but not so much, a little bit more about the whole UC thing, some of his memories of Luke Fickell, some of the things that he was privy to hearing and seeing and watching as voice of the Bearcats over these last 6 seasons. And who knows? Maybe Dan has an opinion on who the front runner or front runners might be for this job. It's Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We're back in a moment.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Swinney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Swinney, the original used car superstore.
There's 2 beds in that room. There's 2 double beds.
Boy, you're
in that room. Jim wants to know, said it kind of reminds me of Mr. and Mrs. Wilson on Dennis the Menace. There are a lot of people wondering, what's going on down there. Because you've been very hard on Danae on this program. I mean, you have worn her out when it comes to her choice of accommodations on places where you guys have been staying, whether it was down in Mexico. Right. I think you referred to that 6-star resort as a dump. And then you went on to say that the house you rented down on the Gulf side of Florida here the last couple of weeks was also a dump. Anything you want to share, or would you just rather stay away from that topic?
No, we were catching a situation. There's no doubt about it. But, Casey, this is what you have to look forward to when you're married for 13 years. You see that? No action, pulling no wool, and then going back, pulling no wool. So 13 years of marriage, that's what it gets you. 2 separate queen beds. And you know who Tucker slept with last night? Danae. I'm all by myself, and don't think I'm not going to go to that Taylor Swift concert and get me some phone numbers so I can get a Mrs. Jones number 3, because I will. I ain't messing around.
I did TJ Watt last night. I hope TJ Watt likes eating grass, because I fed him like a mule when Lyle Collins was laying on his back. We like pancakes, and I put syrup on that boy. I fed that man. Put syrup on him. That's what we're doing. We're pancaking the league this year, baby. Let's go.
That's Zim Who. I mean, is it getting any better than that guy? Look at him. That's a real fan. It's a real man. I love that guy.
Also, when I lost in.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Even with the Bengals coming away with a huge win yesterday, Brian Billick talking a lot about how impressive the Bengals on both sides of the ball looked, and, of course, the man who was there to call each and every play yesterday, the voice of both the Cincinnati Bengals and the UC football Bearcats and basketball Bearcats, shifting gears now into full-on hoop season on the UC side until the bowl game. Dan Hoard. Dan, before we get to UC and Luke Fickell, your impressions about the Bengals yesterday. Did you see something out of this team yesterday that maybe you had not seen so far this year?
Well, there was a level of toughness in that game that I'm not sure I had seen this year, and I don't know that I had to see up until that game. The Titans make you earn every inch on both sides of the ball, and I think that's why it was a tremendously satisfying win for the Bengals yesterday. They have the utmost respect for Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans players. So to go there twice in 10 months and get out of there with two almost identical wins, 19-16 the first time, 20-16 yesterday, is pretty remarkable. And I think they're feeling pretty good about their performance yesterday.
You know, Danny, you look at the defense, and everybody loves talking about the Bengals offense. And look, I do too, because when they got everybody in there, I mean, it's fun to watch. They were fun to watch even without everybody in there yesterday. But this defense, you've gotten to know Lou Anarumo, and look, when he first got there, a lot like Zach Taylor, you can be the best coach on the planet, but you got to have players. And then all of a sudden the franchise went out there, started spending some money in free agency to bring in some guys, whether it's Von Bell, it's Hendrickson, it's Apple, it's some of the DJ Reader, some of these guys. Anarumo has got to be one of the top 2 or 3 defensive coordinators in the league. Is that fair to say?
Well, he's certainly on the short list. I don't know if it's top 2 or 3, but certainly top 10. He's done an amazing job with this defense. You know, there's something interesting. I was thinking about this last night, Tom. When you've got great defensive coordinators that have their own spin on things, they might become known for a specific thing. For example, when Mike Zimmer was Cincinnati's defensive coordinator, he kind of became known as the double A-gap blitz guy. A lot of defenses hadn't done that before. He helped make that popular in the NFL. Going back to Dick LeBeau with the zone blitz, he kind of became known as the inventor of that. Cincinnati plays more 5 defensive linemen alignments of any team that I've seen in the recent NFL past, and nobody really talks about it. It's a 3-4 defense, but it's done with 5 defensive linemen, and they don't do that on every snap, but they mix it in a lot against running teams. They did it a lot yesterday, and I'm waiting for the point where one of these NFL Network gurus or something like that starts talking about how revolutionary that is for Lou Anarumo and the Bengals.
That's a great point. Very interesting point, and great observation. All right. Let's start with Luke Fickell, and let's just focus on him for a minute. You were here the day he took the job, where the program was after Tommy Tuberville blew out of town. Fickell leaves Ohio State, took over for Tressel and all that sort of mess. They go 6-7. Urban keeps him on as co-defensive coordinator. He comes down here. I don't know. Dan and I live here. I don't know what the expectations were realistically for Luke Fickell. But when he first came in, and you're around him a lot, a couple of times a week at least over these last 6 years during the season, was there something early on where you said, you know, they might really have something here?
Yes, and it continued throughout the entire 6-year period, Tom. More than any other coach in football, at least, that I dealt with at UC, Luke Fickell was the guy, publicly or privately, that never complained about any shortcomings that Cincinnati might have. And there were more when he started the job than there are now. But a lot of coaches, you know, they say all the right things in publicly as they have to. But behind closed doors, oh, we don't have this, we don't have that, we need this, we need that, this guy's an idiot, and whatever it might be. Luke Fickell never did any of that. And I think that really permeated throughout the entire organization, his coaches, his staff, the players. They kind of embraced the fact that they didn't have all of the bells and whistles and that they were going to win big anyway. So from day one, that really stood out to me. And like I said, it lasted for 6 years.
You surprised he took the Wisconsin job?
I'm surprised the job was open, quite honestly. I'm not surprised he took it because I think it's a good fit for him. But when they made the coaching change this year and promoted Jim Leonard, it really seemed like, all right, this is the guy that we kind of wanted all along to be our head coach. He's beloved by the fan base. He's a local legend. Even after their final game, there wasn't a ton of speculation in Madison that he was going to be out. Most people seemed to think that he was going to get the full-time job. So that was the part of it that caught me off guard. I didn't think that job was going to be open. Once I started getting texts yesterday from people saying, have you heard about Coach Fickell? And I knew that it was real and Wisconsin was going after him. I'm not that surprised that he took it. Obviously, he's got Big Ten roots. He knows what Wisconsin is capable of. It's a good fit for his family. He's a Midwestern college town kind of guy, I think, at his heart of hearts. So in that aspect, I'm really not that surprised.
And, Dan, I had made the comment earlier that not only all the reasons you just said, I think Wisconsin is a great fit for him and his family, but the way UC's season ended compared to the last 2 years, where you went to a New Year's Six bowl game 2 years ago, last year, of course, to the college football playoff, where you start getting into that whole, Brian Kelly kind of thing, right? Where the school that's trying to hire you, they need an answer right now. And you got to give them an answer. And when Kelly left UC, it meant leaving before a BCS game. When Kelly left Notre Dame, it meant leaving before a big New Year's Day. It was almost like the stars were aligned that if there was a year where Fickell could pull it off and not draw the ire of the fan base or some in the athletic department as to his timing, that this was it.
I agree with that. If you look back at last year, there will never be a year like last year where all of those big-time jobs were open at the same time. USC, LSU, Notre Dame, the list went on and on. All of those schools contacted Luke's agent. He probably could have had any of those jobs, and I do think he would have seriously considered Notre Dame, but he told all of those schools, or his agent did at least, that he wouldn't even consider the possibility as long as his team was competing for a national championship. So his integrity prevented him from taking those jobs. That obviously was not the case this year. Cincinnati will go to a bowl, but it's not going to be a bowl of that magnitude. And let's also go back to when he turned down the Michigan State job. That was a different time of year. Mark D'Antonio abruptly resigned just before signing day in the spring. Michigan State made a big effort to hire Luke Fickell. And in that case, I think a major reason why he didn't take the job was that timing. He had just gone through the recruiting process. He had worked really hard on convincing all of these kids to come to Cincinnati. Now, just days before the date, he's going to pick up and leave. He couldn't do it. So his integrity helped keep him at Cincinnati for 6 years. And I do agree with you that the timing in this case, while not ideal, is not nearly as bad as it would have been in those other two instances.
All right, Kerry Combs, one of our favorite people on the planet. I mean, I don't know if I like anybody that walks the planet more than I like that guy. And I'm always rooting for great things to happen to him. He's the interim coach. He is going to get an interview, it was said last night at the press conference, for the full-time head coaching job. Names are starting to fly around all over the place. I mean, that's been topic number one on this show here today. Whether it's Brian Hartline, whether it's Tom Herman, whether it's Dion Sanders, or any number of guys. Do you kind of look at any of these guys and say, ooh, now that one would be a little more interesting, or that one might be a better fit for different reasons? And how soon do you think all of this is decided?
I think it'll be soon. I don't think you can afford to wait in college football anymore. So I'm sure John Cunningham is going to try to get this wrapped up as quickly as he possibly can. I would say we learned through the Luke Fickell experience, especially coming off Tommy Tuberville, that Ohio connections is important. I think that will be a significant factor in the hiring. And let me say this about Kerry Combs. I can't imagine. I met with Kerry today and said this to him before I asked him questions in an interview format. I can't imagine a better interim coach in this situation than Kerry Combs for a lot of reasons. Number one, he loves Cincinnati. He loves the school, and he can sell that. But his approach to this, I think, is perfect. He met with the players. He said, my job is to make sure that we take care of you and that you have a great bowl experience. So that's number one. Number two, he contacted every recruit. He assured them that they still have a scholarship. They understand that these guys are going to consider their options, as they should, but he asked them to be patient. He said, this transition is not going to take very long. It will all be wrapped up well before signing day. So we hope you don't do anything rash. We know that schools are going to be coming out of the woodwork trying to poach these guys. So he basically stressed to be patient. And he learned from the 2009 Sugar Bowl experience. He was on Brian Kelly's staff. He saw how poorly that went. And he said the difference this time around is that it's disappointment instead of anger. In 2009, they were ticked off. They didn't feel like Coach Kelly handled it right. That's not the way the team feels this time around. Clearly, they're disappointed, in some cases heartbroken, but at least it's not visceral anger this time around.
One final thing, Dan, before we let you go. Knowing UC the way you know UC inside and out and all the upgrades that have been made in facilities, everybody knows the school is going into the Big 12 conference, huge feather in the cap beginning next year. From the ability to go out and pay somebody, and Brian Billick was just on with us a little while ago. He's very close with Dion Sanders, and he made the joke that the Dion was the one, you got to pay the man. If you want the man, you got to pay the man. And we were chuckling about it. But when you start stacking up UC, and I'm not comparing them to Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan or somebody like that, but as far as, say, Big 12 conference schools are concerned, and maybe you take the University of Texas and Oklahoma out, they're going to the SEC, but say TCU as a great example. They go out and they hire Sonny Dykes this year and hire him away from SMU. How competitive, theoretically, is UC in terms of being able to go out and spend money on a coach?
Very competitive. They were already paying Luke Fickell more than $5 million a year. He was the highest paid coach outside of the Power Five. And now that they're going to have Power Five revenue coming in beginning on July 1st, I think they're going to be able to spend certainly middle of the pack or better in the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma State, some of these schools with, gigantic donors that just cough it up year after year will be able to outspend Cincinnati. But there are teams in that league that the Bearcats will be able to outspend. So I think they're going to be very competitive where that is concerned in the Big 12. The problem you have in college football right now is that the Big 10 and the SEC, as these TV deals go into effect, are going to have more money than they know what to do with.
Yeah.
And we know in college sports, they never look to make a profit. Whatever comes in, they spend, whether it's on facilities, whether it's on coaches, whether it's on whatever. So that gap, unfortunately for the Bearcats, is getting bigger and bigger. But at least in the Big 12, they'll have a chance. With most college football programs, they just won't be able to spend as much as the SEC and the Big 12. Or the Big 10,
Danny,
excuse me.
We thank you so much for your time and all your insight. You're the best. You have been on a crazy schedule. Insane. Although you did miss Maui. So
I did.
I mean, man. Why can't you, when you get a thing like that, why can't you just, a big shooter like yourself, just negotiate out on that, football weekend and go to Maui? Take your bride out there with you.
My contract stipulates that the Bengals come first. So that's always the number one priority, and I'm glad it's spelled out. I never have to make these decisions. It's all down on paper. I do get to do the double dip this Sunday, Tom, though. I'm looking forward to this. Bearcat basketball at noon, Bengals Chiefs at 4:20. So I get to do both on the same day, and that's always fun.
Wow, how about that? A fortunate man. Congratulations. We're happy for you, my man. Well earned. Thanks for your time today, Danny, as always.
You bet, Tom. Thank you.
Love having Dan Hoard on here, and now he just rolls right into the next.
So what happens if UC pulls a North Carolina and Alabama, and it goes to 4 overtimes? Does Dan get a police escort?
Well,
down to
Larry
Paycor?
Shakley or John Burns or one of those big hitters, Jeff Weiler, one of those guys down there. I mean, they probably have access as long as there's no emergencies around to, the helicopter. Is that on top of UC Hospital? Where is that? Where they fly all the...
Oh, there is a helipad down there.
Yeah, there's a helicopter. Yeah. They'll just shoot them on one of those, land a thing somewhere, and...
Just land them at midfield.
Yeah, right on the beat.
Yeah. Forget the flyover. The Dan Hoard.
The Dan Hoard. That's Big League Day.
It is.
UC Hoops, and then right into... the game of the NFL without a doubt this coming weekend.
Absolutely. It's a shame that we had to lose that primetime game and they gave it to Kansas City for that Sunday night game. That was 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yep.
Because this should have been the primetime game that got bumped up, honestly. But Kansas City has now 5. They've already completed their primetime schedule.
Oh, they have.
So there's no chance that this gets moved up. Kind of unfortunate. But
no flex.
No flex. Should be. But
I'm just curious what they have on. Oh, boy.
Sunday Night Football. Okay. What conference is it? Let's play the game.
It is an inter, not intra.
Okay.
It is an inter-conference game. Now, you have a ratings bonanza team at home.
Ooh. Cowboys.
Amen.
Okay.
That's easy. That's
okay.
a layup. And then you have a team from the heartland, from the AFC.
Ooh.
The closest NFL city to Cincinnati.
Indianapolis?
You got it.
Colts, Cowboys?
How about that one?
Sunday Night Football?
And they're not going to flex the Cowboys out.
No.
They're not flexing.
All you had to say was ratings bonanza.
I mean, how about Indianapolis playing in prime time, back-to-back games? Well, you talk about a stinker tonight.
Yeah, that stinks.
Colts v. Steelers, and then you have Colts v. Dallas. I tell you what's going to be a oh, no, I thought I was wrong about that. I thought Monday Night Football had said New England. No, it's going to be New Orleans, Tampa Bay next week. All right. We have a cherry on top because we got to get to box lunch even though Reed Mouse
do we have
is out of town.
I don't think we do have a cherry on top
Our
today.
cherry on top is going to be introducing Trace Fowler.
Exactly.
Now, are one of you guys going to help him out in
Yes.
the absence of
Yes.
Reed Mouse today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is?
Paul is. And Casey is. This is a team
Are you
effort
speaking
today.
in the first person now?
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, you said who? I said Paul. I answered your question.
Trace, how do you feel about working as a – you know what? From now on, we're just going to call him Paul. He refers to himself as Paul. We don't even need a nickname. It's like Prince. He's just Paul. Big league operator comes back from Portland, Oregon, covering all the big-time college hoops on a red eye.
So Trey Wingo called me one time, just Paul. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I did a game show one time. It only ran one time on ESPN. Trey Wingo was the host. Okay, well,
This is a cherry on top.
I'll keep
Go
it
ahead.
quick, yeah. So this was back in 2017. ESPN ran a game show. They ran it one time, and it was called Bracket Genius. And every Sweet 16 team sent a group of 3 representatives to Chicago for a weekend to do a game show. It was a trivia game show. So about a month before, when we were all getting picked, they sent an email out to like 50 schools that had a chance to make the Sweet 16. And they said, hey, we're looking for 3 to 4 representatives to represent your school in Chicago. Trey Wingo is going to be the host of this show, and they're playing for like a couple $100,000. I was like, sure, sign me up. So at that point, Xavier was way below 500. Maybe not way below 500, but they were very squarely on the bubble.
Long shot.
Yeah, but I knew that this was a Xavier team that had a ton of injuries. I was like, yeah, this could be a Sweet 16 team. So Xavier goes. They beat Maryland in round 1, and they kill Florida State in round 2. And all of a sudden, I'm texting a couple of my friends that I knew we had all signed up together, and I said, fellas, we're going to be on ESPN next week. So we get on a plane, we go up there to Chicago, and the best part of the show was that nobody told us that it wasn't a sports trivia show. So we all show up, and this is, I think, why it only ran one time. We all show up thinking we're doing sports trivia, and all of a sudden they're asking us Jeopardy trivia.
like trivial
like
pursuit
real
stuff.
Trivial Pursuit stuff.
Right.
Now, my team, Xavier, we got out of round 1, and we should have got out of round 2, and we got a Mount Rushmore question wrong, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. I don't know why we got it wrong. We froze in the moment.
Who the presidents were on Mount Rushmore?
They asked us the order of the presidents on Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
And
you know the answer to that now?
I know the answer. I know that George Washington is the first one on there, and for some reason we locked up. We got it wrong.
Okay.
Would have won $20,000.
That's a great story.
But anyway, so Trey Wingo was asking us for like one thing about us, and he came to me, and I said, I don't know, I'm just Paul. So
that's good stuff. That's a great story.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I had to take my phone and record the screen of a DVR thing before my DVR got deleted when I moved, because ESPN never put a recording of it anywhere. So I have a recording on YouTube.
No kidding.
That's it. That's the only copy I have.
We got to watch that.
We did all right. We did okay.
That's going to be our cherry on top tomorrow.
Absolutely.
We're going to run a clip from that.
We can do that.
Paul's trivial.
We can do that.
That's right.
All right.
Casey, Paul, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Great work today. Brandon, sort of. Trace, what's happening?
You had some stuff to talk about today, don't we?
A lot going on.
Cincinnati is they're in like a bipolar state. I hope at least if you're a UC fan, you're a Bengals fan as well, right? Like, could you imagine being a Michigan fan? Like, or I guess that wouldn't really work, would it? Because you have to be but could you imagine being like, I don't know, like maybe the Browns won too. Pittsburgh Steeler fan? Is there any like Steeler fans that are also UC fans? It's like a tough time. But the Bengals are who would have thought 10 years ago that you'd say the Cincinnati Bengals are the team that's keeping everybody's hopes and dreams alive.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? It's really hard to believe.
Isn't that wild?
You're right.
It just shows you that winning solves almost everything. And if the Reds could at least have a little bit of sense of opportunistic attitude. If I'm the Castellinis, I'm thinking, man, if we can just find a way to win, everyone's going to like us again, because it doesn't matter what happens.
Well, you're right. And I mean, I think everybody is even, in the city, if you just got down to the two names of Bob Castellini and Mike Brown, and the way they literally have gone like this in 2 years, forget 10 years. I mean, because Mike was getting beat up for bringing Marvin back all the time, and they could never win a playoff game, and they weren't spending the money. But then, the Browns go out, Brown family goes out. They're very fortunate. They get Burrow as a number one pick. They go out and spend a bunch of money on their defense. They get Chase the following year as a number one pick. They choose him instead of the kid, the offensive lineman.
Benesel, yeah.
Yeah. And then they spend a fortune during this offseason on the offensive line. And you look like a pig in slop.
Yeah, back to being the king again. I tell you what, we have a lot of viewership right now. I want some of you to hang around and listen to the Luke Fickell take that I'm about to have when you take off. But did you feel like, after talking to Dan, that it changed your viewpoint on Luke at all? Or did you? I mean, you probably had a feeling of that's what it was the whole time in regards to him leaving the right way.
I think he would have left a year ago, and I don't know exactly, and I don't think anybody's ever proven for sure. I think everybody knew, and it was a confirmed deal, the story he told about Michigan State. I mean, they tried to get him.
Right.
How serious or where any of the conversation, if it went anywhere at all, as it pertains to Notre Dame or USC, I don't know. During last offseason, Oklahoma last offseason, when all those jobs were open, but there was no way Fickell was going to do what Brian Kelly did. And I don't blame Brian Kelly for leaving both Notre Dame and leaving Notre Dame for LSU. I don't blame the guy. But Fickell he is a very ethical, upstanding guy. And I just think the stars were aligned that if there was going to be a big-time job, and it was funny that he brought up Wisconsin, because I was with a bunch of people who are Wisconsin grads in Chicago for Thanksgiving. And we were talking at length that it was a dumb deal, according to the thinking of all of them as Wisconsin alums, that Leonard was a guy they wanted all along. And that's why they fired Christ. They were having a bad year. Yeah. But they felt like they were going to lose Leonard at the end of the year to somebody else, and that's the guy ultimately they wanted.
The coaching game in college especially, obviously, is just such a wild scene because college baseball is obviously significantly different than college football, but at the same time, I got to kind of see that whole cycle and how that goes and how that affects the families. And you got guys that are not the head coach, but the assistant coaches that are digging around trying to find their next landing spot because they know that this guy's thinking about going here, and there's speculative ideas of this, that, and the nature. And it's like, it's a wild 2-3 weeks when the season's getting ready to end, and then when the season's over, because as I guess basically Dan had mentioned that Combs was telling all those recruits, it is quick. They want to get the next guy in there as fast as they can. Case point and proven last year when Fickell did not get the opportunity to go to Notre Dame. In my opinion, the job was offered to Luke, and I don't want to say I know that for a fact, but I want to say that I know that pretty closely, that it was Luke's job to have if he wanted it. He wanted to see out the national championship run. They wanted to move on, and it goes to show you how quickly these schools want to move on because these recruiting classes matter a lot. I personally am a guy, I would rather wait on a guy for 2 weeks and miss out maybe on a few kids on a class and get the guy that I want, just because I think it's been proven that if you got a guy in college football, if you got a head coach, it doesn't matter. They're going to get it right. LSU's a perfect example of that. It was all hell breaking loose down there at LSU. There's kids in the portal left and right, guys leaving. Brian Kelly goes down there. Guys were leaving when Brian Kelly took the job, too. And like him or not, I don't think Brian Kelly would have left if UC was playing in the national championship, if you want to give him a little bit of grace. You said Brian Kelly left. He wasn't playing for a national title.
No, he was playing
for a BCS game. It mattered. I'm not saying it didn't matter.
You're right.
But it's not the same situation as Luke. If Luke was playing in a New Year's Six Bowl last year, not the college football playoff, he would have left as well.
No doubt about it.
So at the end of the day, I don't know if you can kind of pin the two against each other on that situation. Now, I do think that in all fairness, I do think Fickell has, as you said, some moral standards that maybe are above and beyond most college football coaches. So you got to give him credit for that. Having said all that, I do think genuinely the Bengals are back.
They're back.
I think they're back.
They're back.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean they have to win this weekend. I think they're going to win this weekend.
Me too.
But it doesn't mean they have to win this weekend. But they're starting to look. You're playing without your star running back. You're playing without, arguably, if not number one, the second best wide receiver in football again.
Yep.
I think the only game they've lost since Chase went down was a Cleveland game.
Yeah.
So
they're 3-1.
Yeah. So, who would have thought that when he initially got hurt? We didn't know how long he would be out. But Higgins, stud, Boyd, stud, and some guys you didn't see coming that are getting a chance to play, that all of a sudden that catch he made yesterday was insane in the second half. So, they got it going on, and I give it up to Zach Taylor. I thought even offensively they did not look like, again, they were ready to play at the start of the game, but in fairness to him, Higgins, the only mistake he made the whole day was that drop pass down inside the 10-yard line that forced him to kick a field goal. If he catches that ball, they go in for a touchdown, and maybe we're talking a little bit different. But Taylor, he's got the coaching staff that knows what they're doing, and man, they look good.
They do look good. Also on Box Lunch, I got some, I don't want to say outlandish takes today, but I think this is, as many know, I'm an SEC guy. I watch the SEC every single week religiously. I think that I'm relatively non-biased. I think Georgia is beatable. I think they're the best team in college football. But at the same time, I've been saying it time and time again that the SEC has been down. The SEC West are officially all frauds now. I've been saying that for a while. I've been trying to tell everybody that LSU is not very good. And they're so happy to be 18-point underdogs on a neutral site game against Georgia. And they just so happen to get beat by A&M last week. And Bama's in the same boat. So if I have to hear, now I'm spoiling a little bit of a topic now, down on the bottom.
Don't spoil it.
If I have to hear, though, that Alabama should be in the college football playoff one more time, I'm going to blow my head off. I'm so sick and tired of hearing it. They have 2 losses. If they were any other team in the country, put any other program on there, they aren't even getting the light of day. They're not even getting talked about.
No. And a case in point is if SC loses the second game, they're not getting in. Clemson's already lost the second game. They're not getting in. So you're right. I mean, Alabama is the lone dog there with 2 losses, and people are speculating where will they sit tomorrow night when the college football playoff rankings. I mean, is it conceivable Ohio State goes from 2 to 6?
Let's just talk about how last week the college – I haven't forgotten, Tom. I told you last week that I was pissed off. I haven't forgotten the college football playoff put LSU at 5.
Yeah.
They thought they were the 5th best team in the country.
Yeah, they did.
Are we being serious?
Yeah, they did.
LSU doesn't even belong, in my opinion, even in the whole list of gamut of people possibly making the college football playoff. Now, I understand you could say Alabama could be in there. Here's why. Because they have a little bit of a reputation. They lost on the road twice in 2 night games. So I'll give them a little bit of credit for that. But LSU was at home against Tennessee. It got blown out.
They did.
And they just watched Tennessee go on the road to South Carolina, get blown out. And they had the audacity to put LSU at 5. And they got what they deserved. So if they put Alabama ahead of Ohio State or any one-loss team for that matter, I don't care if any of them, then I'm going to blow my – I just – the SEC bias take for the longest time, in my opinion, was unwarranted. I think the SEC is the hardest league to play in, not because on a one-off given situation you can beat an SEC team, but because every single week you're usually faced up with an elite defensive front.
No doubt about it.
And that's the difficult part in the SEC. You get banged up. You know, even though you're playing Mississippi State on the road, and Mississippi State's not a great team.
But they're a good, solid team.
But, yeah, if you're playing them week 3 after you done played Alabama and you done played Ole Miss and you done played – it can wear on you. So I do think that the SEC deserves credit for that. But I don't think they deserve credit for when they all beat up on each other, you still give them the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't work with me. And I'm so tired of hearing about Alabama. Maybe it's just some of my bias. I'm tired of hearing about them, period. But they don't deserve the credit they've been given this entire year. You know, they just don't.
Well, it's really going to be interesting tomorrow night to see because the top 4, as we said earlier, no brainer, easy as can be. But all of a sudden, you start slotting number 5, number 6. Is it Ohio State? Is it Alabama? Flip-flop that. We'll find out tomorrow night. But right now, and he's starting off with Luke Fickell, Trace Fowler with box lunch.
Got a lot to say about Luke Fickell. I don't know. I'll just do the show from here. Is that what you want to do, Casey?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? All right. Here's the truth about Luke Fickell. And again, this is coming from somebody that I'm trying to look at this objectively from the outside looking in. I know that I'm not a UC fan. I know that there's going to be some situations here to where people are going to have really, really strong takes one way or the other. But I think you can have both. I think you can be upset that he left. I think you can also want to never root for him again. But on the other side, appreciate what he did. That is very much possible. On one hand, I don't think it's a secret that Luke was looking for his next jump last year, as we just talked about during the SEC, or not the SEC, excuse me, but during the college football playoffs and the opportunity for them to go. If it wasn't for that, he was gone last year. That's 100% fact. I've been told numerous times that there's 2 schools that are on his quote-unquote dream list, that one being Ohio State and 1B being Notre Dame. Yes, I know yesterday he said that Wisconsin was a destination job, et cetera, but you can forget about it. If Ohio State opens up or Notre Dame opens up and they want Luke Fickell is going there. Also, let's get rid of the notion that UC is just a stepping stone job. Yes, I don't like that term. Here's why. Because what isn't a stepping stone job? If Notre Dame is Notre Dame a stepping stone job? Because Brian Kelly just did it. Is Tennessee a stepping stone job? Because Lane Kiffin did it. What program could possibly not be a stepping stone job? And the answer is relatively simple. If you have an elite program, like maybe an Ohio State, maybe a Georgia or an Alabama, and you have strong ties to that institution already, I could understand that you could say that those aren't stepping stone jobs. But let's stop using the notion that UC is only a stepping stone job. Having said all that, There's something that I do on a religiously basis. I probably shouldn't admit, but I watch an incredible amount of press conferences. It's probably a hobby of mine that I take way too serious. I watch hours and hours and hours of press conferences of all over the place, and the person that I watch the most, spoiler alert, as a Georgia fan, is Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart has been asked numerous times why he stayed at Alabama when he got head coaching jobs offered to him every single year for about 7 years straight while he was at Alabama. For those that don't know, Kirby Smart, defensive coordinator at Alabama through their entire tenure of their elite run. When they were a dynasty, at the top levels of all top levels, Kirby Smart was 1B. He was the right-hand man to Nick Saban. And he's brought up two things every single time he got in these interviews. And I don't want to mess this up, so I'm going to look down here in my notes. He says, do you have the resources, talking money, to travel and recruit nationally, and can you expect to be in your conference championship game and win regularly? He has said that. And if the answer is yes, then you go. And if the answer is no and you're winning, then you stay. And that is what I think Luke Fickell took to heart. And I'll tell you why. Everyone's talking about how great it is that UC's entering the Big 12. And although I think, yes, it is great for the university, it's great for the athletic department in the long run, I'm not convinced it's great for coaches in the short interim right now. And the reason I say that is that you have a situation where Luke Fickell, like it or not, came in here and he took the program, which was at a, I don't want to say an all-time low. That's too strong of a word, but it was at a low point. And he built it back up. And he got a special group of kids to come through, which happens from time to time. He got a special group of kids to come through, and they played beyond the expectations of anybody ever could have for University of Cincinnati football. It took them to a college football playoff, and when you do that, like it or not, even if you're the guy that did it, the expectations grow. And the expectations when you move to the Big 12 are going to grow. The expectations to be able to recruit nationally, be able to go to conference championships, to be able to compete for the college football playoff. And although it's expanding to 12, that might be good, that might be great. But that's what the parameter is going to be from here on out for UC football because they've done it. And I'm not trying to go off somewhere else, but go ask Zach Taylor what the expectations are like in the Bengals locker room.
Well, that was going to be my next point, was that if you start winning and you look at the Bengals, that's exactly what's happened with the Bengals, where you go to a Super Bowl and then all of a sudden the expectations just start to climb. And I think you're right on that with UC, where now all of a sudden you go and you go to the playoff and all of a sudden everybody has these expectations, and now you're going to have to see, like, is the program more than the coach, right? I mean, because that's the same question that we debated forever with college basketball a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Blue Bloods. Are these programs bigger than the coach? And
well, I think
now this hire is huge for UC, and Brandon and I were just talking about this. This hire is huge for UC because you've done so much under Fickell to correct what went terribly wrong under Tommy Tuberville, that now you get it to a point where you compete at a national level going into a big conference, that you can't screw this one up.
Yeah. I agree. So here's to finish out my thought on this Luke Fickell situation. Luke Fickell, like it or not, was going to be judged by a standard that may or may not have been unfair. The last 5-6 years, this recruiting class, and you got to figure COVID added in a year of this. Yeah. You have a situation where they were recruiting players at an AAC level. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Cincinnati football. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Luke and saying that he wasn't able to get elite athletes or anything like that. Sure, from time to time, you're going to get a player that is ranked maybe nationally at a spot you think that they could go to Ohio State or they could go to like a Tennessee or maybe somewhere else, a USC. And UC might snag one or two of those guys. But from a depth perspective, from an overall unit, from a recruiting class, you are not going to be able to recruit guys to be able to play in the Big 12, in the Big 10, in the SEC, in Power 5 football at an AAC level. So what you have here is you have a situation, and Wes Miller's starting to figure this out right now. You have a situation where you're going to go and play elite, well, I shouldn't say elite, but you're going to play upper-level competition in the Big 12, okay? But you're going to have a roster of AAC guys. And you can say what you want about Luke Fickell, and I'm not saying that his one foot was out the door the whole time. But I'll tell you this. I think it was apparent to me after looking back and kind of reading through the tea leaves that Luke Fickell knew the cupboard was relatively bare. I think he knew that they probably weren't going to be able to compete at a Big 12 level. And if you had the opportunity to go to a place that fit the two things that I told you about Kirby Smart saying, you can like it or not, but Wisconsin, you look at the division they play in. Can they play for a championship game every year? The answer is yes. Do they have the resources nationally to be able to go out and recruit? Guess what? Did you see the plane that he got picked up on? Did you see the plane that he flew in? No offense, no offense to UC, but they don't have that. And Luke Fickell, at some point, probably looked around and said, do I want to fight this uphill battle where expectations are high, resources are relatively low? I'm going into a league that's no washover, man. You could say the Big 12 is weak, this, that, and the other, but the Big 12 stacks right up there with the Big 10 this year. Like it or not, they do. They do. And I would say, if you're Luke Fickell, your time's clicking too. You only have so much time to be able to be a hot commodity in this game. So the iron's hot for Luke. Programs want Luke because for his sake, he did a great job at UC. But the truth is that if he goes to the Big 12 and he struggles even just a year or two, who's calling? Who wants you?
Exactly.
And if that's the answer, you can't fault the man for leaving. And that's exactly what happened here. Now, to finish my point, I'm not here to be doom and gloom on UC the whole time, okay? I would say this. UC is the top job available right now. The number one job. Because one thing you get when you're a new head coach, ask Wes Miller, is you get time. People think that you deserve 2-3 years, right? Luke Fickell wasn't going to get that. He wasn't, because Luke Fickell was here. But the thing Luke Fickell knew is he wasn't recruiting Big 12 guys. So if you get a new guy, guess what he gets? He gets the benefit of the doubt. He gets, all of these guys that are out there that are going 2-8 in the Big 12, they aren't his guys. So you got a golden opportunity, in my opinion, if you're a coach. There's only one job out there, one single job in the entire country that's better than UC, and that's Auburn. Auburn, quite frankly, probably has their guy already, right? So
Lane Kiffin, right?
It could be Lane, could be Hugh. I think it should be Cadillac Williams personally. I think that Cadillac Williams is very similar to me like a Marcus Freeman in the sense that he's a high-energy guy, believes in that program, was a part of the program, and that's here nor there. But back to UC being a top destination job. You have your pick of the litter, as they say, in my opinion. And you could say all you want. I'm going to tell you one thing that I do know. There is no one in the history of college football, in my opinion, that has more upside than Dion Sanders as a head football coach. Ever. Ever. Okay? You can say what you want about Dion. Doesn't have head coaching experience at a Power 5. Hasn't been this. Hasn't been that. The guy has been successful in every single thing he has ever done. Go talk to people that are close to him. They say that, man, yeah, you get the flash, but you get a real serious dude too. You don't become successful in life, folks, in multitude of things unless you have a sincere desire to be successful, to want to do the dirty work, to grind. And if you don't think Dion has that, then you're sorely mistaken. And I would ask the second part question of this. The people that are saying to me, well, that could be a complete disaster, Trace. That could fall completely apart. That thing could just hit the rails, and no one would ever, ever, ever want to be in a position after Dion Sanders got done with them. Really? Could it be worse than Tommy Tuberville? Could it possibly get so bad that UC football would be at a lower place than Tuberville had you until Luke Fickell came along? And Luke Fickell proved pretty quickly that it can all get turned around. It can be turned around just like that with the right guy. And there's not a single person in this entire country that could bring more notoriety. And I'm not saying it's all about notoriety, but some of it is advertising. You think the school wouldn't do better if Dion Sanders was the head football coach? Do you think the university enrollment wouldn't be higher? Hell yeah, it would be. You know what else they'd be getting? They'd be getting the benefit of the doubt more likely than not, just because if you think the media controls the narrative, folks, guess who the media likes? They like Dion Sanders. And you know what else I'd say? He's going to be able to recruit. And more times than not, if you got the right people around you, the head football coach's job at a university is to do two things: represent it well, and when you go out to recruit, you can get the right guys, and you know the guys around you that you need to have them coach you up. So I'll leave it at that. Is there anyone else? And I hear guys like Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell, no disrespect to him, I think maybe he could be a great coach. You're going to take a guy that just finished last in the conference you just joined to be the head football coach at your place? Well, walk me through that. You're going to take the guy that literally finished last in the conference that you're joining to be the head football coach at your school when you have the opportunity to go get Dion Sanders? What are we talking about? Seriously. Walk me through that logic. Because at the end of the day, you can say what you want. Matt Campbell had his greatest season during COVID. I'm not saying I'm all out on Matt. I've listened to Matt press conferences. I've seen Matt. I think Matt sounds good. But to put Matt Campbell and Dion Sanders in the same room, I'm going to tell you right now who's going to win. And it's not Matt Campbell. So at the end of the day, I'm tired of hearing about all of this logic of, well, he's never done this, he's never done that. Show me a guy that's had more success in his life than Dion Sanders throughout the entirety of the things that he's done. It's not just one thing he's done. He's a football player. He was a media personality for the NFL Network. That's pretty professional, right? Yeah, he jumped over to Barstool Sports, was successful there. You said he couldn't coach. He wasn't a coach. He's just a high school coach. Okay, well, that's fine. He went to Jacksonville State, HBCU, and had a top 100 recruiting class.
Also went undefeated. And then after his last game, he said, oh, man, that's not enough. We could have done way better. We could have blown the socks off of them. I mean, the dude is not satisfied. He's hungry, has a lot of drive, is a winner. And that's what UC needs. They need a winner to replace Luke Fickell, because Luke Fickell was a winner.
Yeah, and I would say this. The last thing I'll say about UC before we get into some of these other topics, I want to get into the C.J. Stroud situation, Ohio State and their playoffs. You've heard me say this before on this program. I think that recycled coaches, for whatever reason, happen way too often. Happens in the NFL, happens in college football. UC's done it with Tommy Tuberville. Don't get a recycled guy.
Yeah.
Don't go get a recycled guy. I seen Dan Mullen in the chat.
Dan Mullen.
I mean, that guy.
Fire me up, baby. Dan Mullen.
Dan Mullen. You think that's going to get this fan base excited? That guy makes more
man.
excuses for everything. And I'll tell you another thing about Dan Mullen. I don't have proof of this, but I have a strong suspicion that when Tennessee was going to go play Georgia, ESPN just so had a former, what'd they call him? I think they called him a former Power 5 head football coach, anonymous, by the way, said that Tennessee was going to hang 55 points on Georgia. I'm looking at you, Dan Mullen. I think you said that because you think you know offense. You think you know the spread, this, that, and the other, and that's all good and well. But one thing that Dan Mullen has proven that he can't do, right, is he's at the elite universities of all elite universities. He was at a place that Urban Meyer won national championships at. He couldn't win there. You think he's going to win at UC? I mean, if you can't win at the top echelon of programs of the sport, what makes these people think that they're going to be able to snag those people and come back and they're going to do well at UC? Can't win at Auburn?
So who do you think UC should get?
Dion.
Dion's one for me. Number
Really?
one. Number one.
I'm all
I
in
do.
on that.
I just don't. I think that there's no one in the country that provides as much upside as Dion Sanders does. Okay. And the downside isn't that big of a deal to me. I really don't. I would rather figure it out and lose on a guy like Dion than to go out and get a guy like,
like a Herman or a Hartline?
Yeah. Give me Tom Herman, for instance, right?
Yeah, sure.
He went to a Power 5. He went to Texas.
Yeah, stunk.
I mean, if you can't win at Texas in the Big 12, how are you going to win at Cincinnati in the Big 12? You can't. This isn't hard. If you go to Texas, Paul, in the Big 12, and you can't win at Texas in the Big 12, how are you going to win at the University of Cincinnati in the Big 12? Riddle me that.
I mean, I'm not like a Herban guy. I'm just throwing guys out.
I know, but I'm so tired of hearing these guys. Please, chat. Please. So tell me who should be the next head football coach if it's not Dion Sanders.
What's option B for you then? Is it what they're talking about right now?
Listen, I'll say this. You're not going to like to hear this because you think I'm a homer. That's fine. Be a homer. I can be a homer all I want. If you're not going to get Dion Sanders, then you go get the best assistant you can at Georgia. Period. Georgia has the best football culture that there is in college football right now, bar none. You know what it is? It's the old Alabama, like it or not. You can say what you want. Oh, I'm a homer. I'm saying this. I'm saying that. No. Kirby Smart spent 10 years under Nick Saban. He took the exact recipe of their success. The exact recipe. He took it. You know what? There's a story that was told about the first year that Kirby Smart was at Georgia. You know what they were doing? He accidentally printed off all of the Alabama rules, schedules, etc., and he didn't change the head title. Still said Alabama on the top of the sheet. He said, shit, we got to fix that.
Why?
But my point is that if you want to try to go, everyone, look what Oregon in their first year, like it or not, right? They go out and they get the top assistant at Georgia, doing all right. Give him a couple more years out in the Pac-12. See what happens. I would do that. I would find someone that has been in a winning culture and a winning program at the elite level, the highest level possible. But first, I'm going to go and make Dion Sanders say no. And he's got to tell me no 5 times.
Yeah. Well, right now they have the interim head coach right now. What's his name?
Kerry Combs.
Kerry Combs. I have a very, very suspicious feeling that he might just be the next head coach.
No way. I'll tell you right now, I don't know Kerry. I don't know Kerry. I don't know Kerry. So what I'm about to say is probably not fair. I'll be honest. That's not fair. Kerry Combs can't be the next head football coach at the University of Cincinnati. It can't. It can't. I'll tell you right now, if you wanted to put me up against it, there's only a couple. You need either elite recruiter. Hartline's not a bad name, right? He's been pretty elite at Ohio State.
Yeah.
But again, you're taking a risk. I'd rather take a risk on a guy that the whole entire country is going to be fully focused on.
But is Hartline as much of a risk as Dion, though?
I'd say he's just as much, if not more. He's not been a head coach. He's not been the head of anything.
Yeah, to me,
Dion's been ahead at least.
But how much does it matter though? This is where I come back to Dion, and this is what I mentioned, and it's really just trial by fire. Like none of us would know the answer to this until Dion gets a high level job and answers the question. And to your point, yeah, he has been successful everywhere he's gone. But at the same time with Dion, and this was what I was talking to Brandon about in the commercial, where you get into a conference like where Dion is in Jackson State and you get some good recruits in there, it's not hard to dominate a conference like that.
Are you talking about like Luke Fickell did?
It's not.
Are you talking about the exact same situation that Luke Fickell was in?
But that's not a good –
in my
the
opinion.
AAC's not a good conference.
That's my point. I mean, Luke Fickell has feasted on lower competition. Dion Sanders, you could say maybe the same.
Yeah. So, Dion is – and like I said, I don't know anything about Dion as a football coach. I'm just saying that knowing how something like that operates, where you get some good recruits in a untalented conference and you get some talented players, you dominate everybody, and then you get a job like this where you don't have that talent discrepancy in the Big 12. You're not going to have that at that level. So then how do you make up for it? Is he a good enough head coach to make up that talent gap difference? And is that risk in trying to find that gap the same as getting a guy like Brian Hartline? That's right. That's what I don't know. That's the question I would ask. And I'm not smart enough to figure that out.
I understand that. I'm just saying that we'll see what happens. And you know what? Oftentimes I'll say this. There's guys that quite frankly would do an unbelievable job that when they get hired, nobody might not be the splash hire. truth be told, you know who wanted the Georgia fan base wanted when it came down to when they fired Mark Richt?
Who? I don't
Tom
remember.
Herman. Tom Herman
Was
Tom
Herman really?
was all over the chat boards.
Oh,
you know who they hired? They hired Kirby Smart. And I'll be honest with you, the fan base was about 50-50 on it. 50-50.
I don't remember that. Was Herman really up on the list?
Herman was on the fans list. He was never on Georgia's list. I think Georgia, they knew they wanted Kirby. Kirby was an alum.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But my point is that, you know, as a fan base, you never really know what you want until after a few years. And then at that point, the proof's already in the pudding.
Where was Herman at that point? When
he's an Ohio State coordinator.
He was? Okay.
Yeah, he's an Ohio State coordinator. And he ended up at Houston, I think, right?
Herman?
Or no. He was yeah, I'm not sure at the time. This is
I don't remember. I'm
pretty sure he was Ohio State. He was Ohio State offensive coordinator, etc.
Yeah.
That's beside the point. Let's get to, speaking of Ohio State. Let's do this. I want to talk about C.J. Stroud for a minute. I think that oftentimes there's this obvious, clear thing that happens with fandom. There's this overreaction. And if anyone knows me, knows that I'm not maybe the biggest Ohio State fan, right? But I like to be unbiased. I like to try to see things for what they are. C.J. Stroud's a good quarterback. The idea that C.J. Stroud cost Ohio State that football game, and I'm hearing people, you know, he doesn't have the dog in him, he doesn't have this in him, he's 0-2 against Michigan. C.J. Stroud don't play defense, man.
Yeah.
And guess what? Ryan Day is in charge of the defense either. Yeah, he's the head coach, but he brought – you guys wanted to fire the last guy? He fired the last guy, brought in a new guy. Still didn't get any better. Now, it's ultimately up to him to get fixed. But Ryan Day is a good football coach. And the idea that you're going to fire Ryan Day for what? I'd ask you for what? Who are you going to go get that's going to fix that? You know, I'm going to say something else about that whole situation. People are going to hate me for this. And it's not a hater thing. Urban Meyer, guess what? He had the good old days. He had great teams. But you know what else he had? He had a absolutely horrible program in Michigan to play against every year. They were terrible. Michigan football is not what Michigan football is today. Now, I'm not saying Urban Meyer wouldn't have beat him. Maybe Urban Meyer beats him. But I'll tell you this, he ain't going 7-0 against these he's not going 7-0 against these Jim Harbaugh Wolverines. He's not. So what's happened is you got this false sense of reality, Ohio State fans. I'm not talking about all of them, but some of them. You got this false sense of reality that you're just going to beat Michigan every single year just like you did 10 years in a row or whatever it was. That's not the case anymore. You got a real football coach up there now. Paul, do me a favor. Dig up all the Michigan head football coaches really quickly, and I want you to list the last 4 of them off before Harbaugh. Let's listen to this laundry list of beautiful names once he gets to it. But
I could probably do it off the top of my head.
I mean, you got Brady Hoke, right? Is that his name?
Brady Hoke. Yeah, he was before Harbaugh, and then I'm gonna say Rich Rodriguez. Yep. Okay. So it was Brady Hoke, Rich Rodriguez, Lloyd Carr, and Gary Moeller.
Yeah, okay. So Lloyd
That's
Carr is
going
good.
all the way back.
Yeah,
into
Lloyd
the
Carr
90s.
is legit. So my point is this: it's going to be tough. That game's not going to be easy anymore. If Jim Harbaugh's there, it's going to require a 4-quarter game. And you know what? I don't have a dog in the fight. I still think Ohio State's a better football team. I do. I think anything can happen in a 4-quarter game, which is why we all love sports, to be honest. But at the same time, I'm not here to make excuses for Ohio State. They played poorly. They got to show up. But I'm not firing Ryan Day. Ryan Day's the same guy, if you don't remember, that, quite frankly, outcoached our good friend Dabo Swinney in the college football playoff. And if Clemson didn't get absolutely every single call you could possibly imagine in that game, Ryan Day could be a national champion for all we know.
True.
So before we jump off the Ryan Day ship, just check yourself a little bit.
It's unbelievable.
Check yourself.
Unbelievable to me that people were talking about wanting to fire him. Unbelievable. I legitimately, I thought it was a joke. And then
Well, when I brought up, I brought the question up to Tom, was it a Joe's issue or was it a coaching issue? I was never in my mind did I think it was Ryan Day. I thought it was just poor defensive coordination. I mean, the team got beat deep. Their safeties got beat deep 3 times. Those were 3 of McCarthy's touchdowns were like deep throws, just deep bombs. Right. And I mean, right out of the beginning of the second half, the exact same thing happened. A deep bomb, touchdown against the safety. I'm like, how could you not coach this up to not let them get beat deep? There's something got to be said about that. Jim Knowles, is that the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, and they brought him in because last year they got slouched. That's it. I mean, that is Ryan Day's job, though, like it or not, Casey. Ryan Day's job is to put the right guys in place to make sure that those things don't happen. And I don't know, I would say the 4th and 6th thing is a situation that he'd like to have back. I know he would. But at the end of the day, your defense has to get a stop.
Yeah.
Your defense can't let basically Michigan to turn around and hand the ball off and
their backup running back at that.
Run right through a line and have one arm tackle and then he's gone. Right? Your defense can't be in a situation where you have to commit so many guys to the box that it's one-on-one coverage and you got your defensive backs. I don't know if they're not taught. I don't know what it is, but they're just not turning their head around. You got to find ways in which you put your team in the best position to win, and I don't think they did that from a defensive standpoint strategy. Now, let's get to this, though. Ohio State playoffs. This hurts me to say this, but I'm going to tell you this right now. Ohio State should be in the playoffs if USC loses. This is how it goes for me. It's relatively cut and dry. This thing's very simple. Georgia's in. Okay?
Sure.
Michigan is in. Mm-hmm. TCU is in. I said this last week. I'm going to say it again. TCU is in. You don't win that many good games. You don't play that many games in the Big 12 with ranked opponents. And then you lose to a team you already beat and not make the playoffs. Okay? They beat Kansas State by 10 earlier this year, albeit at home, but they beat them by 10. If they slip up and they play in the Big 12 championship game this weekend and they lose, they don't deserve to be out of the college football playoff. Okay? They put an absolute whooping on Iowa State. That same Iowa State team, by the way, let me remind you, go back to the top. That same Iowa State team that's coached by who? That's right, Matt Campbell, the guy you all want. But I just don't understand how TCU is not in. So that leaves one open spot, and it's relatively straightforward. USC can play their way in if they win the Pac-12 championship. If they don't win, Ohio State's in it for. I don't even think it's a discussion. Personally, who jumps them if Ohio State's not in it for?
I mean, the answer is Alabama.
That's
I know you don't want to hear it, but
that's
the answer.
team.
That ain't the answer, though.
Yeah, that's the only other team that can.
That's the only team that has the.
Well, if that's the answer, there isn't an answer.
Yeah. So,
personally.
Yeah, to me, it's just the top 5.
And I know I've been hot on this take. I know no one wants to stand up to me probably in this office and be like, "Oh, Alabama should be in." I just don't know how you can defend a team that has beaten literally hardly anyone relevant. Okay? They haven't beaten anyone relevant. They beat Ole Miss.
No,
I mean, who else have they beaten? Help me.
I don't think anyone in this office thinks Alabama should be in.
Yeah, I think I more so am just reading the tea leaves of how the playoff committee is setting it up. I in no way, shape, or form think they should be in, but they just the way that this is setting up is definitely setting up for a committee tomorrow night to put Alabama at 5, and then they just they slide right in when USC loses.
And if that happens, I feel sorry for college football. Because the thing that I stood up here and the thing that I was passionate about this whole entire year and why I think college football is so great is that every week does matter. And what you're basically saying is that one half of football trumps 2 weeks of football.
Yeah.
That can't be the case. Ohio State, like it or not, was in that game. Yeah, they had a couple late touchdowns they gave up. Do I think Ohio State deserves to be over USC at one loss if neither one of them played the rest of the year? No. Right? But the one thing about USC that's a little difficult for me personally is that they have to play a game that Ohio State doesn't have to play, right? And that's the problem with the championship games.
And I'll jump down to why the Vegas likes the Stripes in a second. But the last thing I'll say is that if USC didn't have to play this week, they're in.
Yeah.
But they have to, and Ohio State doesn't because Ohio State lost.
Yeah.
Which is just tough. That's where the system's broken. That's where 12-team playoff does make a difference. It does matter. So the last thing, I'm going to jump down to why the SEC championship game matters right after this. Vegas likes the Stripes, so I don't know if you guys have looked, but Vegas likes the Stripes, man. Anytime the big old Patrick Mahomes Chiefs are involved in a game and the line's as low as it is, that's got to bode well.
Let's take a little look-see here.
Go ahead. Let everyone know what the line is, Paul.
The Bengals and the Chiefs, it is at 2.5 for the Chiefs.
That's a great line for Bengals fans. I'll tell you why, because most people are going to look at that. Immediately they're going to take the Chiefs, I think. I could be wrong, but I would say the public is going to probably favor the Chiefs in that subject because they have Patrick Mahomes. But the Bengals are playing better. Silently, maybe they'll get some more recognition nationally, but if I'm a Bengals fan, I am absolutely stoked that it's a 2.5-point line. Doesn't mean you're going to win. Ohio State found that out, right?
Yep.
Doesn't mean you're going to win, but it definitely is encouraging. Yeah. The last thing I'm going to say here, why the SEC championship game matters. I've seen some people in the comments saying that it doesn't matter, not because you're a Georgia fan or because you're an LSU fan. I'm talking about as a college football fan as a whole. Here's why it does matter. If Georgia were to lose, right, what happens? Michigan slides to 1. Georgia probably slides to 2 or 3, which is relatively irrelevant there. But what does happen is the top seed, for those that don't remember or don't know, the top seeds get to choose where they play their semifinal game at. And there's a huge discrepancy where those games are being played. One's being played on the West Coast. One's being played in Atlanta, Georgia. If Georgia doesn't get to choose where they play, right, they might have to travel to the West Coast, play against, obviously, a notable team, right? Then have to travel all the way back to the East Coast, turn right around and travel right on back down to L.A., right, for the national championship game. Whereas if Michigan, okay, were to finish 1, they're going to stay right there in the same time zone, right? And they only have to make the West Coast trip once. You can say what you want. You can say it doesn't matter. But if you fly out, you have to fly all the way across the country, and you have to fly all the way back across the country, and you got to fly all the way back across the country again. That stuff matters. Yeah. Now, you can say that, oh, Trace, you're making that overblown, this, that, and the other. Kirby Smart, again, I know, I listened to way too many interviews. Kirby Smart has said the reason he feels like they had a huge disadvantage in the national championship game when they played Alabama was for one reason. And it was because they lost 2 days. One day they had to fly out to play in the Rose Bowl. And Alabama was playing in Atlanta, and they were done that night, and they were in their own beds that night after they played their game against, I think, Clemson. Is that right?
Sounds right.
And Georgia, quite frankly, wasn't in their own bed. They weren't back to schedule until a day late, which might not seem like a big deal, but I'm going to tell you right now, Thursday Night Football, which I know that's 2 or 3 days difference, Thursday Night Football in the NFL has proven that days not having a ritual matters.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying it's a huge deal, but I do want to bring it up to at least the chat, the viewers, that is a big deal. I think that matters, and we'll see how that ends up going. Does the chat have anything to say? I know I got kind of wild there for a minute, but Ohio State's got to be in at 4 if USC loses. If TCU loses, they better not drop out. I'll tell you what.
God, I was about to say
that would suck.
I was about to say, so you kind of want Georgia to be at 4 then, because then they would go play the 1 seed, right? So the 1 seed would either be forced to either stay in their own time zone, we're assuming Michigan, right? Or they would have to go out to LA. So either way, like, you're going to put the top seed in a predicament then if Georgia's at 4. Because it's going to be played in Atlanta.
No. Georgia's going to be the 1 seed. If Georgia were to win the game, they stay in the number 1 slot, is what I'm getting at.
Right. I'm saying if they lose, they're
not going to slide to 4. They would slide to 2 or 3, which is irrelevant. All I'm saying, Casey, is that the top seed gets to pick where everyone plays.
Right.
So they either get to say they want to play in Atlanta or they want to say they want to play in, I think it's Arizona. My point is that Michigan and Georgia, they both want to play in Atlanta. If Georgia wins, Michigan has to travel to Arizona, and guess what? If they win, they travel back to Michigan, and then they travel back to L.A.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying as like whoever you don't want to give another team an advantage is what I'm saying. So if they did slide down before, you're forcing Michigan to travel is what I'm saying. You're forcing that team to not have an advantage by staying in the same time zone. Does that make any sense?
Possibly. I don't know. I'm losing you a little bit.
You both are now having to travel instead of just the one team. Because Michigan would either play TCU or USC.
No,
Right?
This is what you're thinking. You're thinking of the teams. No, Casey. It's a neutral site game. There's 2 locations, period, right? Are we on the same page here?
Yep.
So no matter who you're playing, it's either going to get played in Atlanta or it's going to get played in Arizona. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Doesn't matter how they rank them. The number 1 seed gets to pick where they play. Ultimately, what I'm saying is there's only going to be Michigan or Georgia is going to be the 1 seed, period.
Right.
And guess what both of them want? Both of them want to play in Atlanta.
Even though what I'm saying is if Georgia is at 4, they can't choose. Michigan can't go to Atlanta, right?
If Georgia is at 1, what are you talking about, Paul?
So,
help me out.
I see. Okay.
If Michigan is at 1 and Georgia is at 4,
Michigan won't pick to go to Atlanta because they won't want to play in a Georgia home game.
Well, that's not going to happen.
I see what he's no.
I see what you're saying now, but Georgia is not going to be 4, so that's not a problem for Michigan.
All right.
That's why I said
that took some mental rewiring here. I got it now.
That's why I said
that is a funny thought, though. That is a funny thought. I do think, believe it or not, I do think that if Michigan were to play Georgia, if that was how it went down, 1-4, I think you might be right. I don't know
he's
what would
right.
happen.
There's no way. You're telling me Harbaugh would want to choose to go to Atlanta? Play a road game? No way.
And I don't know if it's unrealistic or not. Wouldn't they want a rematch from last year?
They're not going to drop Georgia to 4, man.
No.
Not when you got teams like Ohio State and you know TCU with 1 loss.
Yeah.
The only way
I think this is pretty cut and dry.
The only way Georgia falls to 4 is if USC wins, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, why are we even having this conversation? Georgia's 17.
That's what I mean. Like,
we're wasting everybody's time and breath. I don't know. Does the chat want to get into anything farther? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. They've been kind of quiet. I'm waiting for Jolly to tell me why he wants Mr. Campbell. I just don't understand that, man.
I see Brian Hartline.
Yeah, Sean's a Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline's been an asset to Ohio State big time. I mean, have you ever seen a wide receiver room like Ohio State's had in the last 5, 6, 7 years? Brian Hartline's that guy. So I still think, you know.
Yeah, that's my number 2. It's Dion, then Brian Hartline, and then number 3. I don't know. Kind of your scenario would make sense. Just go out and get the best assistant coach from a winning program like Georgia or Ohio State or Michigan or somewhere.
Right. Just Ohio State's one of the very first few, I don't want to say first or few times, but Ohio State doesn't really have, like, outside of Heartline, they don't have, like, a top-end coordinator. Especially out Ohio State guys. Is Ryan Day the coordinator? Or do they have an assistant coordinator? Do they have anyone that calls the plays for offense?
Oh, you mean? Oh, good question. I don't know. I'm with you.
I'm sure someone.
Yeah, especially after Knowles' performance. I mean, he might have been in the conversation, but after the Michigan game, nope.
Thomas said number 1 has to be Fick coming back. Call Luke. Yeah, give him a call. I
give him more money.
I was a little concerned for Luke, not because I care that much, but you can say what you want. I'm not saying Luke got scared. That's definitely not what I'm saying.
I think it's actually a win-win.
But Luke was in a bad spot, man.
Yeah,
you can say what you want.
I'll put this out to the fans. This is actually a win-win, regardless how you think of it, because we're going into a situation where the standards are so high with Luke Fickell, and he probably wasn't going to meet them, right?
I don't think he would have.
Exactly. And if he didn't meet them, then we're down right back in a situation where UC is in a bad place. You don't have the time or the energy to give Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell doesn't get an opportunity to go somewhere bigger. Now you kind of have a situation where, well, we're already in the situation that we have to find a new guy anyways. Let's go out and get someone that, and like a Dion Sanders, who's a hot name right now, and take a swing on something that's a winning program. And if it doesn't work out, well, it probably wasn't going to work out anyway with Fickell and the guys that we had in there right now. I mean, I don't know if you saw Ben Bryant and Evan Prater this year, but
yeah, they're asking for Minter from Michigan. Yeah, Jesse Minter. I don't say I would hate that. I personally like when the head coach is a defensive-minded head coach.
And that would be perfect for Dion. I love the Dion thing. I want us.
Well, Dion, I don't know. I mean, that's the weird thing with Dion. It's like I don't know. This is where maybe I'm stepping on my own toes. Like, I don't know if Dion's known for,
coaching,
being a huge defensive guru, et cetera, but I don't know if you need to be that as a head coach. I really don't. I think that if you got the right guys in place, you got the right coordinators, you put the right structure in place, you bring the right vibes to an organization like Dion can. I'll say this. The reason that I'm a little heavier on Dion than others is because I've heard reputable people, David Pollock from college football, or not college, the College Game Day show. Sorry.
Yeah.
David Pollock had mentioned, was talking to people. He thinks that Dion Sanders should be Auburn number
SEC.
one target. David Pollock. He said that they went to Jackson State, got to be around him for a minute, and he said that guy is so infectious that you will not win a recruiting battle if you have level playing field with Dion Sanders. It's just not going to happen. So take that for what it's worth. Now, is recruiting everything? I think Texas A&M has proven that that's maybe not the case, right?
Yeah. But at least for UC, I mean, at least gives us the level playing field quicker. Because right now we have a bunch of AAC guys, right? So,
well, I just think that Fickell's going to take. If you don't think that's the other thing I want to bring up really quickly. Everyone's talking about, is there anyone on UC's staff that they think should be elevated to the head coaching job? If there's not a clear-cut answer, guess who's going to Wisconsin?
His staff, right?
Yeah. Anybody that he values, he's trying to get them to go to Wisconsin right now.
Right.
So maybe UC internally knows someone that I don't, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
And I don't think Kerry Combs is that guy, personally, to be trying to take over a program in the position that they're in. And, Urban Meyer is obviously probably 1A. If we're all being honest, Urban Meyer is the number one choice. Yeah. Urban Meyer is not coming back to UC.
I thought I saw something where he said that there's no way he would ever come back to UC because it almost broke up his family. Some quote. I might be misquoting it, but.
Well, no, I didn't see that quote. I mean, I know he was on our show. He's on Tom's show not that long ago talking about how he wasn't going to come back. I don't know how much stock we put in all that because coaches say that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Lane Kiffin's a guy that sat in front of people and told him that he wasn't leaving, and then he's gone. I mean, it's happened. It stands the test of time if coaches lying when they are actually leaving. But Urban Meyer's in a position where if he's coming back for a job in which I think is like Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Just like almost like a prestigious job in his mind that
maybe only OSU would be the thing that he would come back to.
I don't think he'll come back again, period. But
I think he's done.
I think he's done too. I mean, at some point you just realize that the game's changed a lot. You got to deal with stuff you never felt like you had to deal with before. NIL is one of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, Chad doesn't have a whole lot of names for me, which is kind of wild. But
what's Marvin Lewis doing?
Yeah. Get him on the phone, man. Dial up Marvin.
He was an assistant coach with Brian Billick up in
Arizona State.
But so, Wes Miller is almost. I'm saying Wes Miller is almost exact proof of what I thought Luke Fickell was going to deal with when he went to the Big 12.
How so?
because you have a roster where the cupboard's bare, right?
Yeah.
And you got to try to piece this thing together relatively fast. And you see how difficult it's been for Wes to do that, and he's got 5 guys that go out on the court. There's roughly 30, 40 guys that are really impactful players on a football team. It's a lot harder to replace or to turn over 30, 40 guys than it is 4, 5. Some would argue in basketball too.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's a very tough spot. It's great for the university. It's great for the athletic department. They're going to the Big 12. But I'm just telling you, you take the same football team that Luke Fickell coached this year, and you put them in the Big 12. And you know what they look like? They might be a little bit better than Iowa State this year.
Yeah.
Would they be, Paul?
I mean, they were close. They were close against Arkansas.
I don't know.
They might win one game.
I don't know. Yeah, I think you make a good point there. So
I just don't think they're that good.
They're not. We've been fading them all year. You can't even lie about that.
I mean, you can literally check the tape. Like,
we've been down
enough
on them.
tape is out there that they've won, but not convincing.
Sean's late to the party. He thinks that I'm talking about Wes. I'm not saying Wes is doing a bad job. What I am trying to explain is that when you move up in league, when you're shifting conferences, the expectations for UC basketball are way less than they are for UC football. And people, like it or not, are down on UC basketball right now. They're frustrated. I'm not saying they're calling for Wes's job. I don't think they would ever call for Luke's job. But I don't think Luke's getting treated like a king in 2 years if he stayed at UC.
I agree.
He's not.
Yeah.
It's an uphill fight. It's an uphill battle. And the truth is that I heard from a reliable source that the 2 reasons that he felt like Luke probably wanted to move on was, one, he didn't want to be a fundraiser. He wanted to be a head coach of a football team, not be a fundraiser. And at UC, you don't have the same resources as many of these Big 12 programs. You want to pull up really quickly, Paul. Pull up the Big 12.
I am.
I mean, again, this is exactly why I feel like Dion is a perfect fit.
Yeah, and I think Dion can literally wipe all that clean and just be in himself. Literally. Like, you don't need to have all the money in the world to maybe go get a guy that's bouncing on the NIL situation, right?
All right, I got it.
All right, Paul, start from the top. Texas and Oklahoma are going to be gone, so we won't even count them.
Yeah.
But give me the rest of these names.
Wait. Oh, I thought you were talking about recruiting rankings. You mean just the teams that are going to be included?
I want to hear the universities that are in the Big 12. Maybe I should be able to do it off the top of my head. I probably can, but I don't want to mess this up.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me back up then.
Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC, so I don't want to include them because that's not fair.
You're adding Houston, UCF, BYU, and UC.
Houston.
Yep. UCF. Right?
Would we say Houston's recruiting budget and resources are more than UC?
Maybe.
I have no idea.
Relatively on par. Okay, that's fine. UCF?
No.
You'd like to say you would like to think that UC has an edge there.
Yeah. Where's the next one?
BYU.
I don't know. We'll say that's even par. BYU's not. I would even say okay. So they're ahead of those. But this is but we're not.
And then
here's
UC
the thing
is
that I'm
fourth
getting
ed.
at. Here's the thing that I'm getting at, Chad. I don't want to lose people. It all comes down to whether or not you can win your league. Does anyone give a rat's tail if UC's finishing 4th in the league every year and they're beating out all the teams we're talking about? No, they don't.
Yeah.
So you know who you have to compete with? You have to compete with Baylor. Who do you think has a bigger recruiting budget? Who do you think has more NIL money?
Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, West Virginia, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Kansas.
Yeah, those.
So Kansas, I would push to the side. I don't think that's a worry. It's this simple. You're going to have Oklahoma State in the mix every single year, right? Baylor, Kansas State.
Yeah.
And who else?
TCU from time to time.
TCU.
Iowa State.
Listen, Texas is a whole different animal. I mean, we're talking about.
But they don't have to worry about it.
It is what it is. Someone brought up another great point. FC Cincinnati, when they transition to the MLS, there's stiffer competition. There's going to be a rough patch here. I just genuinely think there's going to be a rough patch. UC can survive it.
You're right.
But I just think that it's safe to say, and I'm not saying Luke did this on purpose, but I'm telling you, he dodged a major bullet, in my opinion. In my opinion. I think he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Luke Fickell. He did an unbelievable job always at UC. But I'm here to tell you, when the iron's hot, it's hot. When you're in that whole coaching carousel, your name's in it, and then it's not.
Right.
Right? Like, you're the hot guy, and then you're not the hot guy.
Yep.
You're completely gone.
Agreed.
I mean, chat is going to have to help me out here. Give me some of the huge names that were in the Rich Rodriguez, right? Huge name. Struggled at Michigan, went to stiffer competition, gone. Yeah, he went to Arizona for a few years, gone. Like, you only get maybe 1 or 2 chances at this when you're a head football coach. This isn't like you don't get recycled a whole lot.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
So Luke Fickell did one thing that was beautiful. He looked at the Big Ten West, and he thought this league is
winnable.
This league is trash.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll ever beat Michigan or Ohio State the way that they're playing right now, but he'll be in the championship every year with Wisconsin,
right,
on the west side. I mean,
yeah, and Everett brings up another point. Herman is another good example. I just don't think that you go out and you get a recycled coach, Paul. We can't do that. And I say we because I want Cincinnati to do well. I mean, we live in this city.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, yeah, I'm a Georgia fan. Do I watch UC football games every single week? Of course I don't. But I live here. I want the Bengals to do well, relatively, right? If they're playing the Packers, probably not. But I do want the Bengals to win. It makes things more fun. I like to see the Reds be good. I like to see UC basketball be relevant again. That would be fun.
Agreed.
And I would like to see UC football do well. It's just that the problem is that sometimes when you get in these coaching searches, and I'm hoping Cunningham goes and finds somebody that's not a recycled wash-up. You can't do that.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to – I mean, and Luke Fickell's going to be a god in Wisconsin because all he's got to do is win the West, go to the SEC, or go to the Big Ten championship game. And even if they get blown out by Ohio State and even if they get blown out by Michigan or whoever they play, that's like the status quo to a small extent recently.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that they can eventually wind up maybe competing if all things go well.
Yeah.
But if you're UC, you have an unbelievable opportunity. You know why? Because you remember last year, Paul – and we'll end this show here in a minute. But you remember last year, chat, when there was like 4 humongous jobs opening? And then there was this ripple effect where there was another huge job because this guy left to go to that job. You had USC open. You had LSU open. Then you had Notre Dame open. Then Oklahoma came open. What's open this year?
Auburn.
That's it. And Auburn probably has their guy already. It's been rumored that they got Hugh Freeze and or Lane Kiffin.
What a snake move by Hugh Freeze if that's what happened.
No, I think Hugh Freeze is a joke.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so do I.
But that's here nor there. Yeah. You have literally the pick of the litter. You make guys tell you no that you would assume don't want to come. Starts with Urban Meyer, goes to Dion Sanders, Brian Hartline. If they go get like a Dan Mullen,
no, they won't do that.
If they get a
John
Herman,
Cunningham's too good for that.
Even Matt Campbell, man. Like, maybe I'm wrong about Matt Campbell. Maybe he's going to be unbelievable at UC. But if he can't win at Iowa State in the Big 12, what makes us think he can win at UC? All right, let's do the wheel of lunch. Has the chat got any suggestions? Yeah, exactly.
I got one spot that's on my eye. I need it.
I like Casey's grammar, too.
I need it bad.
Type that out a little too fast.
What should we put on the wheel for lunch? Should. All right, you know what I'm doing. Throw Taco Bell on there.
Taco Bell.
I need a Baja Blast.
Real Spirit Cat, really quickly. I know that you might have been in there the whole time. The stepping stone thing, I don't like that. I don't like the stepping stone thing because if you don't have somebody that's leaving to go to another job, then you probably don't have somebody you want. The only way your program is never going to be a stepping stone job is if you find somebody that is risk adverse and they do not want to take a risk. They don't want to leave because they know they have it good where you're at, and most people that are in competition and most people that are successful head coaches are not going to be that way. Waffle House. I do that. Put
Waffle
that on the
House.
list.
I was driving back from the airport this morning, and it was 6:30 in the morning, and I go, I could kill some Waffle House.
I watched the Musketeers play about 7 minutes of basketball. I know I sent that in the group chat. I tell you what, I'm high on the Muskies, man.
They played good games.
I tell you what.
Down a starter, too.
Here's the thing about that. This isn't where I'm not saying I'm all. It's gonna sound like I'm not a Wes Miller guy. I very much am. I think that he's gonna get the ship turned around, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a difference when I watched Xavier play and UC play. Like UC, help side defense is terrible. They don't. Half the guys on offense don't even look like they want to shoot the ball, et cetera. When I watched Xavier last night, now granted they might have better players, and I get that. That's probably maybe why. But like their defense, I know everyone's bad. They want to be like, oh, they couldn't stop anybody late or whatever. Those last 7 minutes. Listen, if Gonzaga shoots that well, if Gonzaga makes the shots they were making, then just crown them as national champions now. Like, and then one thing I always love that commentators make when you watch college basketball games, Jay Billis does this all the time, and God bless Jay. He's better at his job than I will ever be. But one thing they always say is anytime a guy hits a three that comes off a screen, the guy could be shooting a 35-foot three. It doesn't matter. If he comes off a screen, a ball screen, and they shoot a three, Jay Billis is the first to be like, you got to go over that screen. That's the problem. You got to go over the screen. You can't go under the screen. You're going to give up a wide open three.
Yeah.
Dude, Gonzaga was just hitting some bombs last night.
Xavier was going under on a bunch of them.
They were, but I mean, dude, these guys are just popping 35
I know.
footers, dude. I mean,
I know.
I'm going under those screens too because here's the problem. If you try to go over a screen 35 feet away from the basket, you're essentially giving up a dribble drive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to – now you can try. Maybe they got to hedge better. I don't know, but
yeah,
I didn't see a whole lot of problems with Xavier's defense. I know on the rebound rundown, shout out to the rebound rundown, by the way, every single day. Listening to that Monday through Friday. He even got some merch, too.
We do.
You, Paul.
I'll be honest.
Let's see that.
I'll be honest. We got enough.
Stand up for a second.
Look
how clean that looks.
Yeah. Throw a merch line out there.
Hang on,
Let's see that.
That's not bad.
Oh, he's going out of frame.
Shout out Trace for the logo.
Yeah, I did my best.
Oh
man. Casey.
No.
What is Casey doing?
What
is Casey doing?
Casey.
Oh, no.
Casey. Casey, you could have done this in preview.
No. I could have.
I mean, he's doing this live. Live and in the flesh. This is not Casey's best. This is not Casey's best.
Casey, you tried, man.
This is not his best producing moment.
No, that wasn't. I don't know what happened. I happened to click a button on the keyboard and it just flung it somewhere. I'm like, what is it doing? It just reset. That's my bad.
All right.
Let's go.
I got the wheel names
Put the wheel
ready.
lunch on there.
Let's get the wheel.
All right. There we go.
What do we got? Oh, we got the regular. All right. Is Taco Bell on here?
Yep, Taco Bell's on there.
This is a big list.
Yeah, I put a lot of different ones in there.
Wait, we actually have Waffle House on this list?
Yeah.
All right, see you at Penn Station.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Waffle House is it's a staple.
I'll be honest.
Don't even say it. You're going to say something bad about the Waffle House?
No, absolutely not. I love Waffle House. All right, see you, Wendy's.
Let's get Wendy's out of there.
Yeah.
I love how like during this time frame it comes back, you have to take it out of program.
Oh no, I just now figured it out.
We figured it
out.
Yeah.
Man,
I just got to line it up a little bit
right.
better, and I can do it all.
Skyline/Gold Star.
Oh.
Yeah, you put Skyline and Gold Star in the same pie circle?
Well, it depends on what we. I mean, it's the same thing.
This isn't the most not that there was a whole lot of health in this. This is not. This is like the unhealthy all-star list right here.
All right, I guess that's the end of Waffle House.
All right.
That's tough. This is getting worse.
This isn't.
Wait, we got to change the colors. Change all 3 colors. Make them all the same. Put Taco Bell as red.
Well, Skyline and Gold Star are 2 different things.
Well, I would prefer Gold Star, but most of y'all.
I mean,
What's the
that's
shuffle?
exact.
What does it
That's
mean?
the point. You literally just made our point.
What does it mean? What does it mean when you hit the shuffle button up there? We'll have to figure that out next time. But
I don't know. All right, this is close enough.
yeah, close enough.
Oh
no!
All right,
it's McDonald's.
Right,
what's left here?
So we got Skyline,
We're either
Gold
getting
Star, or Taco
Coney's
Bell.
Coney's or quesadillas.
All right, I gotta add them real quick.
I'll be honest. I may disrespect
just
the wheel
leave it
here
at
and get a
that.
Baja Blast anyway. I had my mind set on a Baja Blast when I walked into work today.
All right, here we
When
go.
do you not have your mindset on a bow?
Oh, it's been a while. Oh,
Skyline time.
all right. Skyline.
When you're feeling good and hungry.
Skyline time.
It's not terrible.
All right. No, I love
I
Skyline.
don't hate it. Portugal playing at 2 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. What are we doing tomorrow?
2 o'clock. What are we doing tomorrow?
We
Listen,
got to figure this one out because
all-
we're not on the air to like Tom's on the air, but we are not on the air tomorrow.
Yeah. Listen, let's do something. I don't know. Chat. We got some regulars in the chat.
I mean, this is an American moment.
How many people are still in my computer died? How many people are still in the chat? Are we down?
We're about
42.
40. Yeah.
40 what?
42.
About 40.
40. Can you put in the chat? This might be like an egg on our face moment. We might have like 5 people vote. Can you put in the chat? Are you off work or can you watch the World Cup? I don't know how to phrase this, but can you watch the World Cup with us or not? Do we have enough people to go somewhere?
Yeah.
Just put chatter meet up for World Cup ?
Oh, chatter meetup.
Chatter meetup. C-Box maybe.
Chatter meetup for World Cup.
Yes or no? It's that simple. Can you do it or can you not? Some people are going to be at
yes,
work. They're not going to be able to go. It's 2 o'clock. I mean, America's playing Iran, but who's counting? Seems like an important thing.
Okay, there we go. I posted the poll.
What's the odds on that, Paul? Do we know that?
Yeah, we need to come up with a bet here.
What's our bet?
Chatterbox bet.
Well, I'm just saying, like, what's our odds of winning? Are we like even money on?
No.
What's
U.S.
our-
is a heavy favorite.
As far
to
win?
What's
the
on the
win?
3-way money line?
Yes, 3-way money line. What's the win?
Even money.
Oh,
I know.
that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta have them winning, right?
We have to win to move on.
Right. So we have to have at least that.
So it's even money in the United States sports books to win.
Which means it's probably closer to like 130 internationally.
That's what I'm saying.
Because they bump it down.
I wanted
for
a
the
minus
US.
200. You hit me with even money on winning?
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Wales is plus 700 against England.
Well, that's the thing. We've already proven the sports book wrong before. They thought we were going to lose to England.
That's true.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I thought the U.S. was like minus 200.
The problem with the U.S. is we have to score a goal.
Yeah.
That's the problem with soccer.
Yeah. Good point.
Let's see here.
A whole lot of scoring.
Did you watch the England game?
Can I admit to something?
Yeah.
Hit me.
I don't like soccer. I don't like soccer. I've said that time and time again. But there is something about the Olympics sometimes, and there's something about the World Cup. I've watched like five or six World Cup games.
Really?
Yeah.
Bet
and
on
I'll
any
be
of them?
honest with you. I haven't bet on any of them. So I'm just watching them out of just because I will say this. I've always made fun of soccer. I hate soccer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These guys are so damn talented and so good that I, dare I say, enjoy it. That's tough to say.
That's tough to say for you. I get that.
Yeah, I enjoy it. They're really good.
You know what's crazy about
I still
that?
think the offsides rule is dumb. Got to get rid of that offsides rule. We need to put a line. Soccer. What would you call them? Hardcore people are gonna be mad at me for this. We need to put a line like hockey, right? So once the ball enters the area, then it's free game. You don't have to be onside.
I don't mind the rule. I just think that there should never be a draw. It should always come down to PKs. Some people hate that idea, but
here's the real question: what's our Chatterbox Cyber Monday deal? We giving away free merch?
That's another big one.
Man, it's been tough sledding to get merch here. Period.
I know.
We've been working on that.
That's a good point.
So before we promise anything,
what are we gonna do? We gonna put a store up for Chatterbox merch?
I have a genuine question. How many people do we have in the chat? What's our poll looking like? 2 votes?
So we've got 8 votes. 75% say yes. So at least 6 people have said yes.
All right. So I think we try to set that up. We'll have that answer tomorrow on where we're going during Tom's show.
You can tweet it out too.
Or we can tweet it out. Yeah, maybe we just tweet it out.
Chatterbox Twitter.
Yeah, Chatterbox Twitter. We'll tweet it out on Chatterbox Twitter. That's what
were you going to say about the merch?
I wasn't going to say anything about the merch. What I was going to say is I'm going to have Tom bring this up tomorrow as well. If we moved show times, theoretically, hypothetically, possibly, we I don't know. I just wonder if we would garner more viewership if we pushed our shows, Tom's included, to more of a 5 o'clock, 6:30 time slot. Like 5 o'clock Tom, 6:30 secondary shows.
Like we all go at night?
At the afternoon?
We all go in the afternoon.
I don't...
Just saying, I wonder, the chat's obviously the ultimate envy. I'll say, here's my only thought on all of this. We've talked about this at length. People work, obviously. Some people can't log on while we're working, so we have people that watch later. But people like live. I'm wondering if the chat has any suggestions on when we could possibly go live during some of the shows. Maybe it's not Off the Bench. Maybe it's not Box Lunch. Maybe it's not Too Picky. Maybe it's not any of our other shows. But is there a time frame if we go live to start talking that we would probably have, I don't say more viewership, but that's probably the word that comes to mind.
I mean, just based off of our analytics, the people watch at 3 to 6, that afternoon slot, our clips and whatnot. So yeah. I don't know if that's just because it's like right after work, school.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying if we came on right after work or school, I feel like that might help. But we might also lose some people, I know, because they might have other things that are going on during that time frame. But that's here nor there. So we're going to Taco Bell. Is that the plan?
Well, it landed on Gold
that's right.
Star.
That's right.
I think it landed on Skyline.
It landed on Skyline. That's what it is. All right. So here's the deal. We will be back tomorrow. Tom will be back.
Yep.
10 a.m. Every day.
Yep.
We're going to start moving some things around here. I don't know what exactly that looks like, but I do know this. And I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I don't mean this negatively towards other programs, other people, other things. But I do think that this show that Tom does, and I also think that the stuff that we do perhaps is higher quality than others. And there's certain time frames that people obviously tune into things, and for whatever reason, their analytics their shows seem to be doing better than ours from time to time. And I don't know if that's just maybe a case in point of they have better programming, and I don't want to admit it, but I also think there's something to the fact that there's, just like they say about retail spaces, if you got a good retail spot in New York City, it doesn't matter what you're selling, you're going to sell it because there's people there. So we'll find that out. We'll figure that out. But I do want to at least get some of our loyal listeners a chance to chime in and see what their thoughts are. Maybe we'll figure that out tomorrow. But that's here nor there. We're going to enjoy the rest of our day. You enjoy the rest of your day. If you're an Ohio State fan, relax. You're probably going to make the college football playoff. That's the truth. All right? You're probably going to make it. Now, will you win the whole thing? I don't know. But I'll tell you this. I'm going to drive over to Indiana probably the next day or two because I hedge my heart. That's what I do. And I will be putting $50 on TCU, USC, and Ohio State to win the national championship at plus 1,400 odds. You know why? Because Michigan has no chance to beat Georgia. And the only other teams that could possibly beat Georgia are teams that could maybe expose the secondary of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Hey, you could come with me Friday.
Yeah, what are you doing Friday, Casey? You texted us yesterday all gung-ho.
What are you doing Friday, Casey?
Friday is my sister-in-law's birthday, and they're going to Boogie Nights at...
Oh, my God. I have been promised for 5 years. So my girlfriend, the night that my girlfriend and I started, like, hanging out, she came from Boogie Nights at Lawrenceburg at Hollywood Casino. And I've heard for 5 years, I've heard Boogie Nights this, Boogie Nights that. And then it closed. It closed for a while. I didn't even know it was back reopened. We are now 5 years later, and I've still never been.
Well, I mean, you could come with me Friday, and we could come hang out there.
What's Boogie Nights?
It's like a dance club at Hollywood Casino in Lawrenceburg.
Oh, you guys are gonna go dancing.
It's like an 80s, 70s, 80s. Like
but
the
movie. Pac-12 football championship is playing at the exact same time.
It's hard to beat a team twice. That's all I'm gonna say. That's why I hope TCU stays in because I don't know. I know I've said this time and time again. I need to stop saying it. I've literally have said that TCU is gonna lose like 4 weeks in a row. I probably should just shut up at this point, but God, TCU is they're gonna trip up at some point. Maybe they fall to 4. Let me ask you this: if USC and TCU both lose, does Ohio State jump to 3?
We'll see tomorrow. Maybe
we'll see tomorrow.
All
right, we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe not us personally, but you'll at least see probably Tom. And if you don't see Tom, then you'll probably see one of us because we'll fill in for him. So we're gonna see someone. Take care, everybody. Thank you.